Chapter 36:23. When green-robed Xiaohua heard this, he laughed coldly and said, "Let them beat you, but don't accidentally kill them." However, at this point, green-robed Xiaohua's face suddenly showed a shocked expression and he hastily looked at Xiaohua. Xiaohua naturally also thought of what green-robed Xiaohua was thinking. In a flash, Xiaohua also cried out, "Not good! This Star-Lord Hall is so brazenly intercepting and killing nascent soul cultivators. If it wasn't their usual practice, then they definitely have the intention to kill. The number of cultivators that can survive from Yaotai Mountain definitely won't exceed 10, no, maybe more than 20. It wasn't that Xiaohua hadn't thought about this before, but now that he thought about it, he immediately understood the essence of the matter and a chill ran down his spine. That Star-Lord Hall's Hallmaster is a cultivator at the peak of the 5th grade of essence energy. If he makes a move, you and I won't be his match. Green-robed Xiaohua said in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist, you have to think of a way. Why did you jump into this pit of fire? There's no need to talk about the bloodstains on the top of your head, they're even more life-threatening means. As long as you fall into them, there's only a slim chance of survival." Xiaohua looked at the approaching blood-colored light and said indifferently, "I'm afraid you and I will have to risk our lives this time." "That's easy to say," green-robed Xiaohua sneered. "Even if fellow Taoist wants to risk his life, where will you find Kong Hongwu?" Green-robed Xiaohua had just finished speaking when he immediately became vigilant again and hastily called out, "Fellow Taoist, don't think of something outrageous. Taoist Master Jingting admittedly did it because of you and me, but at that time was rather tight. Fellow Taoist couldn't have asked about Rin Jing's secret in front of a group of cultivators. Moreover, when fellow Taoist fought against Taoist Master Huada, didn't you also release that demonic beast called Inghua? Taoist Master Jingting's death can't be blamed on you or me. It's because his luck was really too bad." Green-robed Xiaohua was exonerating Xiaohua. What he said was naturally the truth. Nothing in this world was perfect. When regret was born, even if there were thousands of reasons, what use would it be? After the green-robed Xiaohua gave a few more reasons, he simply shut his mouth and didn't say a word. "Fellow Taoist." Xiaohua saw that the green-robed Xiaohua wasn't speaking, so he said, "Not to mention that Master Taoist Jingting died for us, just this defensive formation, this is Star-Lord Hall's killing intent. If we don't find any flaws in the defensive formation, how can we escape from it? Although you and I have already obtained the Imperial Tutor's lot, do you think that Kong Hongwu will let off the act of killing a Star-Lord? For the sake of our survival, we will also turn this Yaotai banquet upside down." "All right." The green-robed Xiaohua nodded and said, "As you wish, I also know that what you think is reasonable. Fellow Taoist, can't you go by yourself? Why did you ask I to go? There's also the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua, the dragon vein Xiaohua, and so on." Xiaohua didn't answer. A moment later, the green-robed Xiaohua's dispirited voice rang out, "Sigh, I knew it. The first person to eat crabs won't have a good end. I only wore a nascent soul Taoist robe. How did I get into this kind of trouble? Fellow Taoist, if I can't come back, you have to burn paper for I on the 1st and 15th day of the lunar month as a sacrifice to I's soul. Thank you for sacrificing yourself for us, fellow Taoist." Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands. "Actually, if something happens to fellow Taoist, I'm afraid that I might not be able to leave this Yaotai Mountain. If I can leave, I will definitely burn paper for you." "Baldy!" At this moment, the green-robed Xiaohua shouted again, "I'm going. If something happens, you have to recite Buddhist scriptures for me. It's best if you use Buddhist magic to summon me back. Even if I can't be free and unfettered on top, I will still go down to accompany Xue Xue. Damn it, go quickly." Xiaohua's nose was about to become crooked. This was what he was thinking at the bottom of his heart, and all of a sudden, the green-robed Xiaohua said it out loud. However, the green-robed Xiaohua clenched his teeth and flew into the air. Although the suction force was much stronger than before, the natural suction force on Xiaohua's body was even stronger. Moreover, the thick fog and the vast energy pillar were still unable to form. "Ha, a fellow Taoist, you see, your plan is not appropriate. The green-robed Xiaohua was overjoyed and flew back to the top of Xiaohua's head. I have a good character, even the heavens are not willing to let I take risks. Change into a Taoist robe. Xiaohua didn't say anything further and let Dragon Vein Xiaohua take out the mountain river seal, taking out the 2 nascent souls he obtained outside of the Yaotai mountain from his dantian. Boom! The vast energy pillar rumbled and a thick fog suddenly appeared. The suction force was like a trapped beast that instantly rushed in front of him. Send them back to the dantian, let I choose properly. The green-robed Xiaohua was unexpectedly picky. Okay, but fellow Taoist doesn't have time. If I leave with the blood-colored light and fellow Taoist is received by the imperial formation, I'm afraid you will be separated from Taoist Jingting's nascent souls. Xiaohua hurriedly sent the 2 nascent souls back to his dantian. Then, with a wave of his hand, he took out the soaring dragon shears and said, "This is for you to protect yourself." The green-robed Xiaohua urged the nascent souls to return to his lower dantian. Xiaohua's mind also entered with the soaring dragon shears. The green-robed Xiaohua pondered for a moment and found a mid-stage nascent soul shell to enter. The entire nascent soul's body flickered with a faint radiance. In a moment, the originally lightless eyes revealed expression. Then, layers of strange runes emerged from the depths of the nascent soul's body. Following the radiance covering the surface of the nascent soul's body, a series of crackling sounds could be heard. The runes cracked quite a bit and cracks appeared on the nascent soul's legs and hands. The green-robed Xiaohua said helplessly, "Alas, this Taoist robe doesn't fit. Fellow Taoist, please bear with it." The Jade Archive Xiaohua handed over the soaring dragon shears and urged, "The multicolored light is about to arrive. The soaring dragon shears is a sharp weapon, you should keep it for yourself." The green-robed Xiaohua stretched out his hand, "Give me the ice sea mirror. Oh, also, take a look at Taoist Shi Fan and Taoist Chu Feng's Jiankuan pouch. See who has the other Kunlun mirror." The Jade Archive Xiaohua frowned slightly and put away the soaring dragon shears. He stretched out his hand and the ice sea mirror was sent out. Then he took out the mirror that was very similar to the Kunlun mirror from Taoist Shi Fan's Jiankuan pouch. The green-robed Xiaohua opened his mouth and a beam of multicolored light landed on the ice sea mirror. The ice sea mirror followed the multicolored light and flew into the green-robed Xiaohua's mouth. When the multicolored light landed on the mirror trembled twice and didn't fly away. "Demon child, give me a drop of essence blood," the green-robed Xiaohua shouted. Unfortunately, no essence blood appeared in his dantian. "Damn it!" the green-robed Xiaohua cursed. The Jade Archive Xiaohua stretched out his hand and a drop of essence blood fell onto the mirror. When the essence blood merged into the mirror, the green-robed Xiaohua held the mirror with his hand. It was like an ordinary nascent soul holding their own life magic treasure. At this moment, his dantian shook slightly. The Jade Archive Xiaohua knew that the multicolored light had fallen and he was about to be sucked into the blood-red light. Also, the green-robed Xiaohua was still haggling at this moment. "Give me one of your dual-colored spirit flames. Aren't you unable to use that thing?" The Jade Archive Xiaohua asked curiously. "Of course not in the past. Now that I have been tempered by the 5 Qi righteous thunder and have the secret technique of a Mahayana realm cultivator, of course I can." The green-robed Xiaohua smiled slyly. The Jade Archive Xiaohua was stunned. He didn't expect that under the 5 Qi righteous thunder, his primordial spirit would have an unexpected change. However, he couldn't haggle over anything at this moment. He pointed his finger and a red and yellow spirit flame appeared in front of the green-robed Xiaohua. The green-robed Xiaohua's face became cautious. He opened his mouth and the spirit flames slowly fell into his body. The entire nascent soul trembled violently as if it was about to collapse. The Jade Archive Xiaohua raised his hand, but in the end he put it away. He could help the green-robed Xiaohua inside his body, but if he left his dantian, he still couldn't help him. "Fellow Taoist, quickly send I out." The green-robed Xiaohua opened his mouth and flames rushed out from his mouth and nose. "Okay." The Jade Archive Xiaohua hurriedly flew out of his dantian with the green-robed Xiaohua. At this time, The imperial formation was already covered in a blood-red color. Just when Xiaohua's body was about to touch the multicolored light and disappear, boom! The righteous qi fell and a thick fog was also born. A huge suction force pulled the green-robed Xiaohua and Xiaohua's body stopped there. What kind of bullshit fire is this? How can it be so powerful? The green-robed Xiaohua struggled to maintain his nascent soul that was on the verge of collapse. The righteous qi fell and tightly wrapped around the nascent soul, but it also helped the green-robed Xiaohua. Seeing the thick fog cover the green-robed Xiaohua, Xiaohua saw the green-robed Xiaohua spit out flames from his mouth onto the mirror in his hand. It seemed like he was going to use the spirit flame to refine it. When he saw this, the green-robed Xiaohua's body disappeared. When the suction force disappeared, Xiaohua's body also disappeared in the blood-red multicolored light. The suction force within the blood-red multicolored light was extremely strong. Moreover, when the multicolored light landed around Xiaohua, it immediately condensed layers of inscriptions. These inscriptions were like blood-red armor that completely covered Xiaohua. Countless poems and articles flowed within the inscriptions, giving birth to an unspeakable imprisonment. This imprisonment was like thorns that deeply pierced into Xiaohua's skin. Even though his body was as strong as a demon's body, most of his magic power was still imprisoned, making him unable to struggle at all. What was special was that these inscriptions isolated spiritual sense, Buddhist sense, and soul sense. Xiaohua could only see the inscriptions unceasingly flowing in front of him. It was as if he was at the bottom of the sea. His entire body was supported by the multicolored light and shot up like an arrow. Although Xiaohua's spiritual sense and other divine abilities were unable to be used, Xiaohua was not in a hurry. This was because he could still sense the danger of the green-robed Xiaohua's pillar of righteous qi. Currently, the green-robed Xiaohua had already passed through the most dangerous stage. Under the imprisonment of the defensive formation, he was using the uncontrollable spirit flame to refine the ice deadly mirror. However, the defensive formation seemed to be at the very bottom of the Yaotai mountain. The green-robed Xiaohua had been traveling in the thick fog for a long time without any signs of stopping. Suddenly, Xiaohua frowned. His perception of the green-robed Xiaohua suddenly began to weaken. Not good. Xiaohua immediately knew that something was wrong. This was because he had already encountered this kind of perception when he was in the Dawn Rain continent. It was when his Phoenix Dharma body fell into the void. However, at that time, his perception was abruptly cut off. Chapter 36-24. Although Xiaohua knew that the situation was not good, what could he do now that he was here? However, it was also strange. Not long after, the perception became stronger again. Xiaohua could actually feel the uneasiness of the green-robed Xiaohua. As Xiaohua rushed into the sky, the perception became intermittent. When the inscriptions in front of Xiaohua's eyes gushed out like a fountain, a burst of light and darkness intertwined. The green-robed Xiaohua was like a kite with a broken string, and there was no news of him. Damn it! Xiaohua bit his lip and thought to himself, I have to throw a meat bun at a dog for no reason, and I can't come back. I don't know when the Phoenix Dharma body will come back, and this green-robed Xiaohua is also lost. I hope this defensive formation isn't as heartless as this Xiao thought. Of course, although Xiaohua couldn't sense the green-robed Xiaohua's location, it was his primordial spirit after all, so there was a kind of indistinct feeling. He vaguely knew that the green-robed Xiaohua wasn't in danger at this time. Collecting his thoughts, Xiaohua raised his eyes and looked around. He saw that this was a blood-red space, or it could be said that it was like a sky filled with sunset clouds. Xiaohua's surroundings seemed to be misty and boundless, but there was nothing, no matter if it was a mountain peak, clouds, or cultivators. Moreover, although the inscriptions around Xiaohua's body had already disappeared, his divine sense, Buddhist sense, and soul sense still couldn't leave his body. This caused him to be at a loss. After all, in the previous dangerous situation, if his divine sense or Buddhist sense were restricted, his soul sense could always be used, no matter if it was far or near. This gave Xiaohua something to rely on in dangerous situations. He had never encountered a defensive formation that even restricted soul sense. However, facing this blood-red sky, Xiaohua always had a kind of vague familiarity in his heart. It was a kind of feeling like he had returned home. Ouch! Xiaohua urged his magic power and flew for a while. Suddenly, he had a kind of realization, this is the void. Good. After Xiaohua understood, he looked around and couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Star-Lord Hull really spent a lot of money. I don't know how much they spent, but they actually set up a defensive formation in the void. Since we are in the void, so what if I don't use my spirit sense? Just as he was thinking, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat, and he stopped abruptly. He narrowed his eyes and looked into the distance. Green light flashed between his eyebrows, and he was about to use his heavenly eye connection. But at this moment, a breeze suddenly blew by his side, and Xiaohua couldn't help but move to the side. This movement didn't matter, but Xiaohua's body suddenly tightened, as if he was bound by a rope. Xiaohua was greatly alarmed, but before he could urge his magic power to struggle, the force suddenly disappeared again. After flowing light and vibrant colors flashed in front of Xiaohua's eyes, another scene appeared before his eyes. This was a similarly blood-red sky, but this blood-red sky was dotted with brilliant stars. These stars were of different brightness and even moved from time to time. What was special was that in the midst of these thousands of stars, a huge meteor with a tail was especially dazzling. Unfortunately, before Xiaohua could take a few more glances, boom! A strong sound broke through the air from behind Xiaohua's head, and a force more violent than a thunderbolt covered Xiaohua's entire body. Xiaohua raised his eyebrows, and with a shake of his hand, the wishful steel staff appeared in his hand. Without turning his head, he waved it in the direction of the sound, and at the same time, he roared, "Where did this little thief come from? How dare you sneak attack me?" Woo! The wishful steel staff crossed the sky, setting off endless waves of air. The sneak attack hadn't fallen yet, but it had already collided with the waves of air of the wishful steel staff. Pa pa pa! The sound of explosions was endless. Bang! The two magic treasures finally collided together, and the sound produced resounded through the sky. Xiaohua stood steadily in midair like a boulder, and slowly turned around. The expression on his face was gloomy to the point of being frightening. Looking behind him, a figure was flying swiftly in midair. That figure was unbalanced, and his right hand was still dragging a halberd at an angle. Moreover, near the left side of this figure, two late Yuanying stage cultivators were flying rapidly, flanking Xiaohua from both sides. Similarly, behind these cultivators, there were dozens of early Yuanying stage cultivators surrounding Xiaohua. "All of you, what are you doing?" Xiaohua's roar was like a thunderclap, his eyes flashing with fury. He came to the Jade Pavilion meeting to win the lot of the Imperial Preceptor, and he also wanted to help Jiang country establish a country, so that he could establish a Dao sect and prosper it. However, he had not yet established a country, and he had only taken one step in the journey of 100 miles. Not only did he encounter the obstruction of many Confucian cultivators, but he was also schemed against by the Dao sect cultivators. He was not afraid of the Confucian cultivators. After all, they were enemies, but the Dao sect cultivators frequently plotted against him, which really made Xiaohua's heart cold. Now that he saw dozens of Yuanying stage cultivators not killing the Confucian cultivators, but besieged by others to besiege him, Xiaohua suddenly felt his blood turn cold. He reflected on it a little. He didn't know if his previous thoughts were correct, and he didn't know if everything he planned for the Dao sect was worth it. People, maybe it's better to be selfish. There is a saying that one must first settle the internal affairs. There is indeed some truth. Under Xiaohua's roar, naturally no one would answer. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes, just like that day in the Black Wind Ridge. He only looked indifferently at the group of Yuanying stage cultivators hurriedly setting up the formation, and there was no movement to escape at all. Xiaohua's calmness made Huodezhenren, who wanted to urge his magic weapon to stop Xiaohua from escaping, calm down. As for Xiaohua's right, it was the nascent soul cultivator called Shui Ming. He still had the attitude of an expert, and his steps were half a beat slower. However, he still blocked the direction of Xiaohua's escape. After the formation was completed, Hu Jinren slowly flew out and said coldly, Xiaohua, you should obediently accept your punishment. Let me ask you, you are a Confucian cultivator. Why did you sneak into my Dao sect cultivators? It's not easy for us to participate in the Jade Pavilion meeting, but you still want to come in and participate. Did you receive a secret order from the Star Lord Hall to kill us Dao sect cultivators? Xiaohua's chin was slightly raised as he looked at Hu Jinren with a face full of disdain. However, he then looked at the cultivator behind Hu Jinren and said, Old thief Hu De, if you want to commit a crime, why worry about the pretext? What did this Xiao do for you to pin such a huge crime on this Xiao's head? I, Xiaohua, have said it clearly at your banquet. I, Xiaohua, have set up a blood monument in the Seven Sons Temple of the Copper Pillar State. I, Xiaohua, have killed the Copper Pillar State Preceptor, killed the Copper Pillar Prime Minister, and even helped Jiang Country establish a country. I, Xiaohua, have come here for the Imperial Preceptor's signature. There is no conflict of interest with you. As for what you said about the Confucian cultivator's spy, I, Xiaohua, find it laughable. I, Xiaohua, have told you clearly that I, Xiaohua, seem to have cultivated a Confucian cultivation technique, but this does not mean that I, Xiaohua, am a Confucian cultivator. Moreover, on the hidden immortal continent, I don't know how many Dao sect cultivators have Confucian cultivation techniques. If you use this to speak the entire hidden immortal continent's Dao sect, I'm afraid there aren't many real cultivators. What's the use of saying all this? Hu Jinren sneered, no one will admit it at this time. Seeing how sincere you are, you must have worked hard in the Copper Pillar State. How about this? You only need to seal your cultivation. When this old man investigates your background, I will return your innocence. With just you. Xiaohua's face revealed an incomparable sneer. Alas. Immediately after, Xiaohua looked at the nearby cultivators with indifference, schadenfreude, ridicule, and sympathy on their faces. He sighed and said loudly, Are all Dao sect cultivators? Your hearts are the same as Xiaohua's. Xiaohua knows that you are forced by the situation and have no choice but to submit to power. Now Xiaohua will give you all a chance. Speaking up to here, Xiaohua paused for a moment and said slowly, Now, if you all leave, this old man will not bicker with you all. If this old man counts to 10 and you all are still here, then don't blame this old man for being ruthless. After waiting for a moment, Xiaohua opened his mouth and said, 10, ha. Not only Hu Jinren laughed, but the black-armored cultivator next to him also raised his head and laughed. He pointed the long halberd in his hand and said, Fellow cultivator Hu De, now this old man really believes what you said. This kid is really arrogant. The matter of the Seven Sons Temple setting up the blood steel seems to be true. Only such an arrogant person can do such a thing. 9. Xiaohua ignored him and kept counting with his hands behind his back. Fellow cultivator Ao is wrong. Hu Jinren said with a smile. His arrogance is deliberately mystifying. He is only a mid-nascent soul cultivator. How dare he set up a blood steel in the country of Confucian cultivators? Any normal Dao sect cultivator can't do such a thing that Confucian cultivators are afraid of. Who would be so reckless as to cause trouble for themselves? Other than trying to cover up and attract our attention and treat him as a real Dao sect cultivator, this old man can't think of any other possibility. Is this guy stalling? The cultivator surnamed Ao frowned and looked at Hu Jinren. Hu Jinren pretended to think, looked up and down, and shook his head slightly. This old man doesn't think so. If he is stalling, then he is waiting for the Star Lord Palace's help. But if the Star Lord Palace makes a move, he will be useless. 8. Xiaohua still said. Hu Jinren looked up and said, Shui Mingzi, what do you think? Shui Mingzi waved his horsetail whisk in the air and said with a smile, Don't ask this old man. You and Ao Zhantian can decide. 7. Forget it. Ao Zhantian put away the halberd in his hand and said coldly, This old man was going to make a move. Then, this old man will see what this guy is going to do. Among the fellow Taoists near this old man, how many of them are wavering? 6. This old man thinks so too. Hu Jinren also looked to the left. The nascent soul cultivators who met his gaze all lowered their heads, not daring to look him in the eye. These cultivators didn't do that under Xiao Hua's gaze. Clearly, in the face of power, the so-called conscience was worthless. 5, 4, 3. In the air, only Xiao Hua's voice could be heard. Everyone was waiting there quietly. It was as if they were watching a joke, and also as if they were waiting for the verdict. 2. Chapter 36:25. Seeing that the number 1 is about to arrive, an older cultivator's expression slightly changes. He opens his mouth and yells, "Junior is not talented. I came to the Jade Pavilion gathering to look for treasures, not to kill Taoist cultivators." Regardless of whether Xiao Hua is a Taoist cultivator or not, it has nothing to do with Junior. With that, the cultivator hurriedly flies several feet away, trying to break out of the encirclement. "Damn it!" Hua Dezhenren roars. "Xiong Yi, you dare to embarrass me?" With that, Hua Dezhenren waves his hand. A fire shuttle of several inches in size falls in the air, turning into a stream of light and stabs at the cultivator. Before the fire shuttle reaches the cultivator, its monstrous ferocious aura has already enveloped the cultivator Xiong Yi in a radius of several dozen feet. Xiong is shocked. He is only an early nascent soul cultivator. How can he withstand the anger of a late nascent soul cultivator? He also didn't expect that Hua Dezhenren would be so shameless as to kill him in front of everyone. 1. Xiao Hua says coldly. His gaze is like lightning, and his voice is so cold that it can penetrate the bones. Except for Xiong Yi. From now on, are not yourselves. While speaking, Xiao Hua rubs his hands. Rumble, a bolt of lightning as thick as a child's arm appears out of thin air, hitting the fire shuttle of Hua Dezhenren. This time, Xiao Hua is really angry. This bolt of lightning contains a huge force. Just this one bolt of lightning immediately cleaves the entire fire shuttle down from the air, causing several cracks to appear on the surface of the fire shuttle. How is this possible? Hua Dezhenren is shocked. This defensive formation can't use divine sense. How can you use this lightning technique? Xiao Hua doesn't pay attention to Hua Dezhenren and whispers in his heart, "Fellow Taoist, where are you? Hey, why did you call me?" Xiao Hua seems to be unhappy. "This is your Taoist matter. What does it have to do with me? Fellow Taoist's nascent soul. I'm afraid it's not easy for me to control it." I understand. But in a moment, you have to help." Xiao Hua understands and doesn't force Xiao Hua. He sends him back to his dantian and says to Dragon Vein Xiao Hua, "Fellow Taoist, can you control your nascent soul?" It's finally Ai's turn. Let I have a try. Dragon Vein Xiao Hua was overjoyed and rushed into his lower dantian. He saw that the Yuanying was emitting an intense golden brilliance. The originally nebula-shaped formless body actually transformed into the shape of a dragon. Rumble. As soon as Dragon Vein Xiao Hua rode his nascent soul out of the space, he immediately waved his dragon claw and several bolts of lightning thicker than buckets fell down in the shape of a dragon. It was precisely aimed at the two early nascent soul stage cultivators. Those two cultivators were already prepared for battle and hastily activated their magic treasures. Unfortunately, they only heard two blood-curdling screams. Two magic treasures that had been tempered for who knows how many years were actually split into pieces by the lightning. Oh! Not to mention that Hua Dezhenren and the others were so shocked that their eyeballs were about to fall out, even Xiao Hua himself was abnormally surprised. His own nascent soul has a thunder core. Although he can't release his divine sense in this defensive formation, he can still control the heavenly thunder. This is his unique ability, but he never thought that Dragon Vein Xiao Hua's lightning controlling technique is actually more powerful than his main bodies. However, Xiao Hua immediately understood. He used a Dao Sect spell to activate his nascent soul, or it was due to the instinct of the Thunder Core. This Dragon Vein Xiao Hua not only used a Dao Sect spell, but also because of the national artifact, Mountain River Seal, he can also control the 5 Chi Thunder. Presumably, the power of the 5 Chi Thunder in the defensive formation laid down by this Confucian cultivator is even more ferocious than the Dao Sect's lightning power. Old thief Huada, give me your life. Xiao Hua was overjoyed. He clapped his hand and the sword gourd rushed out. At the mouth of the sword gourd, something with a nose and eyes appeared. The execution spirit Yuan light soared into the sky and slashed towards Huo Jinren. Huo Jinren was even more surprised. After all, Xiao Hua's lightning controlling technique is still activated. This lightning controlling technique is facing dozens of nascent soul cultivators. The cultivation of these nascent soul cultivators is not much different from Xiao Hua's cultivation on the surface. Xiao Hua can fight against dozens of nascent soul cultivators. What cultivation is that? Moreover, Xiao Hua still has the strength to use the execution spirit Yuan light while dealing with dozens of nascent soul cultivators. Huo Jinren's intestines are already green with regret. However, at this time, it is useless to say more. Huo Jinren shouted, "Fellow cultivators, form the formation and attack together." Following Taoist Huoda's order, a group of cultivators that were battered by the heavenly thunder quickly waved their hands and took out their life treasures. They looked at each other and activated their treasures at the same time. This was an all-out attack from dozens of nascent soul stage cultivators. Although their divine sense was restricted within the defense formation and their nascent soul hand magic arts could not be used, this attack was still far beyond what a mid-nascent soul stage cultivator could withstand. Even a late nascent soul stage cultivator like Huo Jinren could avoid the attack temporarily before attacking again. Unfortunately, they are facing Xiao Hua. Look at Xiao Hua. When dozens of nascent soul cultivators are attacking, he is not nervous at all. He doesn't even look at them and only activates the execution spirit Yuan light to attack Huo Jinren. Huo Jinren knows the power of the execution spirit Yuan light and also knows that he has to hold Xiao Hua back while waiting for the dozens of nascent soul cultivators to attack together. Therefore, the fire gourd in his hand that he has already prepared also flew out. Red flames flashed and first a lotus sprayed above Huo Jinren's head, protecting him. The white light released by the sword gourd was immediately stopped by the fire lotus. Then, the fire gourd rushed out a line of fire to meet the execution spirit Yuan light. Although he has made so many preparations, Huo Jinren's heart is still uneasy. Almost at the same time, he called out again, "Fellow Taoist Shui Ming, fellow Taoist Jiantian, come help me." Hearing Huo Jinren's call, Shui Ming and Ao Jiantian both hesitated. After all, in the previous discussion, Huo Jinren was the leader. The two of them are both late nascent soul cultivators. How can they put down their pride and attack a mid-nascent soul cultivator together with Huo Jinren? Especially Shui Ming, who originally didn't want to get involved in Huo Jinren's matter. However, he was a bit soft-hearted and reluctantly agreed. Now, Taoist Huoda actually ordered two people to besiege Xiao Hua, forming a three-man pincer attack on Xiao Hua. How could they not think about this? However, at this time, the dozens of nascent soul treasures formed a ring of light that flew into the air and sealed Xiao Hua's surroundings. The two of them sighed and looked at each other. Shui Ming raised the horsetail whisk in his hand and thousands of strands of silk flew out and fell on the ring of light like rain toward Xiao Hua. As for Ao Jiantian, he let out a loud roar and the small halberd that was cracked by Xiao Hua transformed into a dragon again. It roared and flew towards Xiao Hua from another direction. The two of them had the intention of watching the show and blindly joining in. However, they didn't expect that such an unintentional action would decide their fate. Pa pa pa. Violent sounds rang out. Under the powerful sealing force, the spirit execution vital light and the flame strands of the fire gourd were suppressed. However, their movements were still not small. The dozens of nascent soul treasures were only a few dozen feet away from Xiao Hua. Even a cultivator of the 5th grade of nascent soul wouldn't be able to survive if struck by these treasures. A sinister smile appeared on Huo Jinren's face. He quickly changed the hand seals in his hand and a streak of flame shot into the fire gourd. The fire gourd's flame dimmed and the strands of flame retreated. The spirit execution vital light took advantage of the situation and slashed towards Huo Jinren. Rumble! At this critical moment, a golden light flashed above Xiaohua's head. Then, a similar ring of heavenly lightning flashed. A faint five-colored aura was born from the void. Moreover, outside of the heavenly lightning, one could see the traces of a majestic pillar of energy. Brew! Huo Jinren involuntarily cried out. Then, a thunderous sound shook the entire space. Rumble, rumble. Countless waves of energy surged. All kinds of splendor splashed out. All kinds of miserable screams rang out incessantly. Even Xiaohua's own face was flushed with a red glow. Xiaohua actually used his bare hands to destroy dozens of nascent soul cultivators' natal magic treasures. Fellow Taoist Longmai. Xiaohua couldn't help but groan. You? Xiaohua said "tu" a few times and didn't dare to say anything else. He hurriedly urged his cultivation technique to stabilize his qi and blood. Fellow Taoist, I'm sorry, I didn't think that I's nascent soul would be so weak. It's not even as good as I's meridian shadow. Longmai Xiaohua cried out in embarrassment. Sensing his own nascent soul's dispirited state, Xiaohua was speechless. How could a cultivator consume magic power like this? Using a nascent soul to deal with dozens of cultivators' magic treasures with bare hands? This was a method to kill 1,000 enemies but lose 800 of your own men. Let's go back first. Let the nascent soul rest for a while. Xiaohua couldn't blame Longmai Xiaohua. Fortunately, his dantian was nourished by the 5 qi thunder. It wouldn't take too long for his nascent soul to recover. He ordered. Just as he raised his head, he heard Huo Jinren excitedly shout, "This old man's guess was right. Xiaohua, your Confucian cultivation has finally revealed itself again. Collect!" Following Huo Jinren's shout, the previously condensed magic power rushed into the fire gourd. The fire gourd emitted a dazzling brilliance and expanded to several feet in size. Within that brilliance, there was a faint image of a small infant. Then, with a boom, a small hand reached out from the fire gourd. Following the fire thread from before, it fell into the soul execution vital light. The soul execution vital light was instantly extinguished. Furthermore, that small hand followed the extinguished soul execution vital light toward Xiaohua's sword gourd like lightning. Only now did Huo Jinren reveal his malevolence. His goal was Xiaohua's sword gourd. Xiaohua raised his eyebrows. He was a bit surprised. He raised his eyes to look at Shui Mingzi and Ao Zhantian's magic treasures and coldly snorted. Damn it. Chapter 36-26. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiaohua waved his hand. The seal of overturning the sea rushed out of the space and let out a rumbling sound. The jade talismans appeared around the seal. Go! Following Xiaohua's shout, the seal of overturning the ocean turned into 100 feet in size. It activated layers of illusions and smashed towards Shui Mingzi's horsetail whisk as if it could topple mountains and overturn seas. At the same time, Xiaohua waved his Taoist robe, and it looked as if it was released from his sleeves. A dark demonic aura rushed out, and the divine power centipede charged towards Shui Mingzi in midair with its fangs bared and claws brandished. As the seal of turning the sea left his hand, Xiaohua's body flew and raised the wishful staff with both hands. Grow, grow, grow. Following Xiaohua's angry shout, the staff became 100 feet long and rushed towards Ao Zhantian's dragon halberd. Seeing that Xiaohua ignored him and only fought the other 2 nascent soul cultivators, Taoist Huoda was ecstatic. He had long been drooling over Xiaohua's soul-slaying light. Otherwise, he would not have attracted so many cultivators to attack Xiaohua. Seeing that the fire gourd's hand was about to land on the sword gourd, Taoist Huoda suddenly had a bad feeling. How could Xiaohua ignore it? This was too strange. Sure enough, at the same time Xiaohua waved the wishful staff, Xiaohua very strangely turned his head and opened his mouth to chant. Thousands of hammers chiseled deep into the mountains. Just as Xiaohua chanted the first sentence, Taoist Huoda's body was immediately surrounded by a large number of pillars of qi. These pillars of qi were like thousands of hammers and chisels that rushed towards Taoist Huda. Immediately, Taoist Huda's body was covered in golden light. This qi was even more powerful than ordinary magic treasures. How is this possible? Taoist Huda was dumbfounded. He hurriedly used his magic power to block the qi pillars. However, just as his magic power surged, his internal organs were inexplicably attacked. It was as if the qi pillars had also appeared in his body. Raging flames burn like nothing. Xiaohua immediately chanted the second sentence. Boom! A flame suddenly appeared in Huda Daoist's heart and lungs. The moment this flame appeared, it became a prairie fire that attacked Huda Daoist's internal organs. In the blink of an eye, Huda Daoist's entire body was covered in flames. Daoist Huda's face was filled with shock. He no longer cared about snatching Xiaohua's sword gourd. He hurriedly activated his cultivation technique. The mana in his body rapidly revolved, wanting to extinguish this heart fire. Unfortunately, no matter how much Huda Zhenren tried to use his magic power, the flames didn't seem to be extinguished. Instead, they became even more exuberant, causing Huda Zhenren's heart to burn even more. Even if my bones are crushed and my body crushed, I will remain pure in this world. After Xiaohua recited the last two sentences, Taoist Huda groaned like a pig being slaughtered. His entire body trembled violently as if he was about to be killed if he didn't control the fire. Since it was such a critical moment, how could Taoist Huda still dare to hold back? He slapped his forehead with the back of his hand. Puff! A stream of fire energy rushed into the sky. Not only did the fire lotus glow in the fire energy, its roots even rushed into his body along with the fire energy. Fire energy convergence. How old bastard Huda, you have white hair all over your body, yet you call others monsters. This Xiao has never denied that he has the cultivation of a Confucian cultivator, yet you deny it again and again. Xiaohua laughed loudly, but the last word was directed at Ao Zhantian. Seeing that the staff was about to strike again, a helpless expression appeared on Ao Zhantian's face. A brilliant light flashed on his arms, and the dragon halberd flew out, roaring as it met Xiaohua's staff head-on. At the same time, Ao Zhantian narrowed his eyes, and the muscles in his body began to move rapidly. His blood also began to surge, and strands of bloody light flashed on the surface of his body. Crackle! There was a burst of noise. The wishful steel staff had not yet collided with the dragon halberd, but the two murderous weapons began to collide with each other again. Various small vortexes quietly appeared in the nearby dozens of feet, blowing the magic weapons that were damaged by the dragon vein Xiaohua's thunder into the sky. Although these magic treasures were the natal magic treasures of dozens of nascent soul cultivators, the lightning still flashed on these magic treasures, causing the connection between the nascent soul cultivators and their magic treasures to be intermittent. In a situation where the essence of the cultivators was damaged, it was difficult for them to retrieve their magic treasures in a short time. Boom! The staff finally struck the dragon halberd, and a loud sound rang out in the air again. Everyone couldn't help but feel that it was deafening. Ao Zhantian was feeling extremely dejected. He had always been confident in his divine power, and he had always been known for his powerful physical body. However, he didn't think that he would be so weak in front of Xiaohua. Ao Zhantian let out a furious roar as the cracks on his halberd deepened, and his body plummeted like a cannonball. His voice was hoarse, and there was a hint of hysteria in it. Even though this roar didn't make much of a difference, the crimson light around Ao Zhantian's body flashed, and the projection of a gigantic crimson dragon gradually emerged from his bloodline. Ao Zhantian actually had the bloodline of a true dragon. Ao Zhantian urged his bloodline to fight with Xiaohua, but Xiaohua borrowed the power of the staff to fly up again. His hands formed a seal, and the first shadow of the seal of overturning the sea collided with the golden light of Shui Mingzi's horsetail whisk. At this time, the seal of overturning the sea was different from before. Although Xiaohua didn't deliberately refine it again, the shadow had already solidified. Although Shui Mingzi's horsetail whisk was also refined with an extremely rare material, it was abnormally sharp and could penetrate almost anything. However, when it collided with the shadow of Xiao Hua's seal of overturning the sea, it was still smashed by more than 70%. Although the shadow had completely collapsed, Shui Mingzi couldn't help but be shocked. On the hidden immortal continent, when had he ever met a Taoist cultivator who could control a magic treasure to fight with him? Moreover, the Herculean centipede, whose shiny black body was covered with dense and strange golden runes, was even more cunning. Just like when Xiao Hua fought with him in the past, it immediately rushed over when he saw a flaw in his fight with the seal of overturning the sea. When he fought with it again, it immediately fled. At this time, Shui Mingzi saw that Xiao Hua actually pounced on him in the blink of an eye. The shadow of the second shadow of the seal of overturning the sea was like a huge mountain pressing down on him. Shui Mingzi had no choice but to pour 90% of his magic power into his horsetail whisk. The horsetail whisk emitted a golden light, and thousands of horsetail whisk turned into thousands of sword lights that pierced towards the seal of overturning the sea. Of course, among these thousands of sword lights, he also left some to stab towards the Herculean centipede in the distance that seemed to be attacking him together with Xiao Hua. Puff, puff, puff. Although Xiao Hua's seal of overturning the sea was powerful, it was, after all, a shadow. Under these thousands of golden sword lights, it was pierced full of holes. Moreover, these sword lights didn't lose their momentum and actually rushed towards the main body of the seal of overturning the sea. Crack, crack. Similarly, when the attack of the seal of overturning the sea was blocked, the Herculean centipede immediately stopped. Its entire body curled up, and its hard carapace pointed outwards. It was like a hedgehog with a mouth full of spikes, making those sword lights unable to pierce through it. Xiao Hua coldly snorted and pointed his hand. A coiling dragon spun up and urged the seal of overturning the sea to press down heavily. A vast and mighty aura rushed over, and before it could land, it had already completely suppressed the sword lights of the horsetail whisk. Do you think this old man is scared of you? Shui Mingzi similarly sneered. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. He formed a seal with one hand, and several rays of light fell into the blood essence. When the blood essence entered the horsetail whisk, buzz, buzz, a trembling sound resounded. The complete strands of light instantly emitted a red color. They either spun, twisted, or pierced straight. They forcibly pierced through the brilliance and pearls around the seal of overturning the sea and blocked the momentum of the seal of overturning the sea. However, at this moment, Xiao Hua once again shocked Shui Mingzi. Xiao Hua actually abandoned the seal of overturning the sea at this crucial moment. A whirlwind rolled up around his body, and in the blink of an eye, he once again pounced towards Taoist Huada. In the blink of an eye, Taoist Huada had just used the fire essence to block Xiao Hua's Confucian fire attack, and before he could use the fire gourd to collect the sword gourd, Xiao Hua suddenly turned into a gust of wind and arrived in front of him. This truly frightened Taoist Huada. Just as he was about to respond, a sharp pain like a sharp awl piercing into his Naiwan palace made him unable to help but take a deep breath. Without waiting for him to use a secret technique to resolve the pain, he saw the spirit execution light suddenly split into two. It bypassed his fire strands and slashed towards his neck with lightning speed. Taoist Huda once again turned pale with fright. He hurriedly wanted to use the fire gourd, but because of the pain in his Naiwan palace, he was a bit slow. Poof! Taoist Huda had no choice but to open his mouth and turn a mouthful of true fire into a fire wall in front of him. Just as the fire was born, whoosh! Another golden light appeared out of nowhere and flashed towards Taoist Huda's left arm. Taoist Huda only felt a chill in his left arm, and then a sharp pain came. His left arm holding the fire gourd was cut off like rotten wood by a pair of golden scissors. His left arm's defensive treasure armor didn't have any resistance. At the same time, just as the sharp pain came out, Xiao Hua's right hand waved his Taoist robe. His action was even more natural than moving clouds and flowing water. In an instant, Taoist Huda could no longer sense the location of his fire gourd. This is this old man's life source magic treasure. Taoist Huda was simply going crazy. He schemed against Xiao Hua's sword gourd, But he didn't think that Xiao Hua was also scheming against his fire gourd. He hadn't even touched the sword gourd's hair, but Xiao Hua's series of attacks had already caused him to lose the rice used to steal the chicken. Poof! Looking at Xiao Hua again, he simply took advantage of Daoist Huoda and didn't wait for Daoist Huoda to come to his senses. He opened his mouth and several sword lights pierced towards Daoist Huoda's heart. Suddenly, an indescribable palpitation appeared in Daoist Huoda's heart. Ah! Daoist Huoda couldn't help but exclaim, but just as he exclaimed, another sharp awl pierced into his Naiwan palace. How was this a fight? It was simply a one-sided slaughter. Daoist Huoda couldn't imagine that Xiao Hua's Daoist cultivation realm was lower than his, but his strength was actually far beyond his own. Moreover, Xiao Hua's Confucian cultivation strength was even higher than his. At this time, Xiao Hua wasn't fighting alone, but a Daoist cultivator, a Confucian cultivator was fighting. Chapter 36-27. Only now did Huojinren realize that Xiao Hua was a nascent soul intermediate stage cultivator, but he had the strength of a nascent soul intermediate stage cultivator. How could he be his opponent? Moreover, seeing Xiao Hua use the spirit-exterminating vital light, the flying sword, and the unfathomable soul stab technique, it was obvious that he wanted to take his life. Thinking of this, how could Huojinren stay any longer? He clapped his hands and an ordinary-looking jade pendant appeared in his hand. With a piu sound, a breath of true qi landed on it. Layers of inscriptions surged out from the jade pendant and enveloped Huojinren in an instant. Boom! Following a majestic pillar of true qi, Huojinren actually disappeared. Motherfucker! Xiao Hua was a little depressed. He understood that this was the escape technique that Huojinren had obtained from the Star Lord Palace. He could only watch helplessly as Huojinren escaped from the Star Lord Palace. Xiao Hua hesitated for a moment, wondering if he should use his illusion breaker eye. At this time, he heard a weng sound of air friction. Ayo! Then there was the sound of a dragon's roar. Xiao Hua stowed away his sword gourd and soaring dragon shears before turning around with a cold expression. A crimson dragon that was close to 1,000 feet in length appeared above Ao Zhantian's head. It opened its sinister maw and pounced toward Xiao Hua. An aura comparable to that of the soul separation stage and an aura that made all the cultivators tremble uncontrollably surged through the air. Oh, a true bloodline? This was the first true bloodline Dharma body that Xiao Hua had seen on the hidden immortal continent. Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with a strange light. It's a pity that my phoenix Dharma body is not here. Otherwise, I'll let it fight with you. Xiao Hua snorted coldly. Golden light flashed around his body, and the heavenly law's embodiment technique was activated as well. His transcendence golden body also appeared. In just a moment, a transcendence golden body that was close to 1,000 feet tall stood in midair like a demon god. Not only were the nascent soul cultivators dumbfounded, even Shui Mingzi was dumbfounded. It wasn't that they hadn't seen such an awe-inspiring Dharma body before, but this was a defensive formation with divine sense shackled. Dao Sect's divine powers were suppressed. Not to mention the Dharma body, even activating Dharma treasures would be somewhat strenuous. How could Xiao Hua possibly bring out his Dharma body? Ao Zhantian's bloodline could be attributed to his true bloodline, but Xiao Hua, who had ever seen such a golden bloodline? Eat this Xiao's staff. Xiao Hua roared and waved the wishful steel staff in his hand. At first, the wishful steel staff was still a few dozen feet in size, but when it hit the top of the blood dragon's head, it was already a few hundred feet in size and a few dozen feet in thickness. Woo! The wishful staff fell with a gust of wind. The blood dragon's eyes were crimson red, and an old voice spoke with Ao Zhantian's tone. This old man has never seen a magic treasure that can injure a bloodline Dharma body. Stop dreaming. Today, I'll show you how powerful this old man is. Let this old man have a taste of your flesh and blood. Pa. This voice reverberated throughout the entire space. The blood dragon opened its mouth, and the blood dragon's breath turned into a giant pillar. The blood dragon also pounced over, obviously wanting to dive into Xiao Hua's body and devour his flesh and blood. Xiaohua's eyes flashed, and he tilted his head slightly. He pointed his finger, not at the blood dragon, but at the seal of overturning the sea above Shui Mingzi's head. The seal of overturning the sea expanded again, and it was a full 500 feet in size. Shui Mingzi had no choice but to use his magic power to block it with his horsetail whisk. As for the divine power centipede, it seemed to understand Xiaohua's intention. Suddenly, its entire body expanded, and the two antennae in front of its head trembled rapidly, cutting towards Shui Mingzi's back. Ao! Seeing that Xiaohua was still distracted, the blood dragon couldn't help but roar, and its speed increased again. However, Xiaohua didn't seem to panic. He calmly waved the wishful steel staff, and it landed on the blood dragon's breath. Pooh! It was abnormally dull, but the dull sound seemed to have knocked on Ao Zhantian's heart. The almost invisible blood dragon's breath was smashed into pieces by the wishful steel staff. That wasn't all. Ao Zhantian was still stunned by what happened next. The blood dragon's breath disappeared with the wishful steel staff, and the wishful steel staff didn't stop for too long. It passed through space and landed on the blood dragon's head with a loud bang. Ao Zhantian's arrogance was finally broken today. The blood shadow Dharma body, which he thought was impossible to injure, was like an ordinary demonic beast under the wishful steel staff. Boom! A loud sound rang out, and Ao Zhantian felt as if a mountain was pressing down on him. It was more direct than being hit by any magic treasure or spell. Pooh! Ao Zhantian spat out a mouthful of blood essence, and his entire body was oozing with blood. Moreover, an indescribable blush immediately spread all over his face. Roar! The blood dragon's blood-curdling screams resounded throughout the entire defensive formation. The blood dragon's body started to collapse from its head down to its tail. Ao Zhantian's eyes flashed with desperation, and he stubbornly patted his head. A blood-red nascent soul appeared in midair. This nascent soul was wearing a treasured armor, and the dragon-shaped totem on the armor was slowly disappearing. The nascent soul held a dragon halberd in its hand that flashed with a dazzling brilliance. However, as soon as the nascent soul appeared, it was immediately shocked. Its two eyes looked left and right cautiously. At this time, it saw two beams of spirit-punishing vital light fall from the sky. They were about 100 feet away from the nascent soul, but they didn't shoot out. Ao Zhantian naturally didn't care too much about the spirit-punishing vital light, but under the fierce flames of the spirit-punishing vital light, a faint sense of desolation arose in his heart. The nascent soul opened its small mouth and whispered a few words. Xiaohua had intended to kill to establish his might. However, when he saw Ao Zhantian's nascent soul appear, he immediately remembered that this was the defensive formation of the Star Lord Palace. Although he would be happy to kill Ao Zhantian's nascent soul would fall into the defensive formation. Wasn't he helping the Star Lord Palace? Thus, he controlled the spirit-punishing vital light to stop above Ao Zhantian's head and said coldly, Ao Zhantian, do you want to live or die? So what if I want to live or die? The blood shadow Dharma body above Ao Zhantian's head could no longer take shape. It slowly turned into a bubble and fell into his body. Ao Zhantian looked at Shui Mingzi in the distance. He was actually blocked by Xiaohua's demonic pet, and Xiaohua's overturning sea seal was able to block Shui Mingzi's horsetail whisk. Xiaohua said indifferently, if I want to die, I'll kill you right now. In order to not leave a nascent soul for the Star Lord Palace, I'll kill your nascent soul as well. Ao Zhantian wanted to retort when he heard Xiaohua's nonchalant tone. However, he knew that Xiaohua had scared off spiritual master Huoda when the three of them attacked him. Now that he was facing Xiaohua alone, how could he survive? What if I want to live? Ao Zhantian was abnormally embarrassed, but he still asked, swear a blood oath and serve me for 1,000 years. Xiaohua replied without hesitation. For 1,000 years, not only will I provide you with all your cultivation needs, I can also help you reach the 5th grade of origin power. Impossible! Ao Zhantian also shouted without hesitation. Xiaohua also didn't hesitate. He pointed at the spirit-punishing vital light and said, fine, since you don't want to live, then die. Spiritual Master Xiao, you've misunderstood, spiritual master Xiao. Zhangtian hurriedly withdrew his nascent soul and shouted, "What I meant was, what kind of good conditions do you have?" "Oh." Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. He stopped the spirit-punishing vital light and said indifferently, "What's impossible? At this point, do you still have a choice?" Then, Xiaohua turned his head and looked at the dozens of nascent soul cultivators. His huge body was like a demonic god as he shouted, "And you all, swear a blood oath immediately and serve me for 1,000 years. Otherwise, I'll kill you on the spot." Ah! All the nascent soul cultivators were dumbfounded. They looked at each other, not knowing what Xiaohua wanted to do. Ao Zhangtian. Xiaohua didn't care about these small fries. He looked at Ao Zhangtian and said, "You'll be the first." Then, Xiaohua raised his eyebrows and swung the wishful staff in Shui Mingzi's direction with a boom. Shui Mingzi was scared into flying far away. His horsetail whisk was powerful, but against the wishful staff, it didn't have any advantage at all. He was scared away, but the seal of ocean overturning seal and the Herculean centipede still caught up to him, not giving him any chance to escape. Ao Zhangtian's mouth was bitter. He was a late nascent soul cultivator, but he was forced to swear a blood oath. This was something he had never thought would happen ever since he entered the nascent soul realm. "Kill." Ao Zhangtian hesitated. Xiaohua shouted, scaring Ao Zhangtian. He hurriedly shouted, "I, Ao Zhangtian, swear to heaven and earth that I am willing to serve spiritual master Xiaohua, spiritual master Xiao, for 1,000 years. I don't dare to have any thoughts of rebellion, gotcha." Just as Ao Zhangtian was about to make his vow, a streak of golden light shot into the sky and landed in the distance. A nascent soul cultivator who was about to flee was immediately sliced off by the soaring dragon shears. "Motherfucker!" Ao Zhangtian finally understood. So Xiaohua wasn't talking to him. "Gotcha!" A muffled sound rang out as a bolt of lightning struck down from above Ao Zhangtian's head. A blood-red mark appeared between Ao Zhangtian's eyebrows. The mark followed the bolt of lightning into the air and transformed into a thumb-sized rune. The rune was about to fly toward the bolt of lightning. However, Xiaohua's eyes rolled up as a green light flashed between his eyebrows. He let out a soft sigh that sounded like the sigh of a demon god. Boom! The same bolt of lightning shot out. The rune actually changed direction and fell into the bolt of lightning. Then, it disappeared between Xiaohua's eyebrows. Xiaohua's divine ability was truly inconceivable. Ao Zhangtian couldn't help but sigh. His originally sullen heart suddenly felt better. He had always been competitive, and not only had he offended Confucian cultivators, he had also offended many Taoist cultivators. Now that he had found a powerful backer, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. "And you all?" Xiaohua's voice was even more majestic than the usual lightning bolt. The dumbfounded nascent soul cultivators immediately came to their senses. It was time for them to make a choice. Chapter 36-28. Of course, the nascent soul cultivators found this difficult to accept. However, when they saw the arrogant Ao Zhangtian lower his head in disbelief, they then looked at the nascent soul cultivator who had just lost half of his shoulder and was now as pale as a sheet of paper, and finally at Shui Mingzi, who was trying to escape but was being held back by his demonic pet and magic treasure. How could they not have made the right choice? The dozens of nascent soul early and mid-stage cultivators all swore blood oaths, which were all taken away by Xiaohua without exception. Then, Xiaohua withdrew his heavenly laws embodiment technique and pointed with his finger. "Go, surround Shui Mingzi." Yes, the dozens of nascent soul cultivators couldn't even muster the will to resist. They responded in unison and surrounded Shui Mingzi. Only Ao Zhangtian and the early-stage nascent soul cultivator named Xiong Yi were left in front of Xiaohua. Seeing such a scene, Xiong Yi was at a loss of what to do. He didn't know whether to leave or stay. His eyes slightly turned as he looked at Xiaohua. "Xiong Yi, you can leave now." Xiaohua ordered. "Yes, thank you, senior." Xiong Yi came to his senses and hesitated. He bowed and flew into the distance. Ao Zhangtian said indifferently, Taoist Xiao, although I swore a blood oath to follow your orders, if you don't respect me, I would rather self-detonate then. Can you still self-detonate now? Xiao Hua replied even more indifferently than Ao Zhantian. Ao Zhantian's expression changed greatly. However, Xiao Hua quickly added, "Of course, fellow Taoist, don't worry. I'm not like that old bastard Huda. You will know my character in the future." Alright. What else could Ao Zhantian say at this point? He looked at Shui Mingzi, who was surrounded by the nascent soul cultivators, and said in a low voice, "This Shui Mingzi has some background. If you can subdue him, it will be of great benefit to you." Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and nodded. "Brother Ao, don't worry. In the Yaotai Mountain, he will either fall into the hands of the Star Lord Palace or me. I believe he will make his own decision. All right, I'll accompany you," Ao Zhantian said in a low voice. He was naturally unwilling to let Shui Mingzi escape after falling into Xiao Hua's hands. By the time Xiao Hua and Ao Zhantian arrived at the scene, Shui Mingzi had already put away his horsetail whisk and was hovering in midair. The seal of overturning the sea had already enveloped him from afar, and the divine power centipede had already activated its demonic qi to fly close to him. "Shui Mingzi." Ao Zhantian looked at the helpless expression on Shui Mingzi's face and said, "This old man won't say anything else. Previously, we all fell into that old bastard Huda's trap. Now that we have offended Taoist Xiao is quite magnanimous. He doesn't want our lives, but he wants us to serve him for 1,000 years. I know." Without waiting for Ao Zhantian to finish, Shui Mingzi waved his sleeves and said, "Since I've made my choice, I won't regret it. However, this old man doesn't quite believe what Taoist Xiao said just now." "Yes." Without waiting for Ao Zhantian to speak, Xiao Hua waved his hand and threw a jade box to Shui Mingzi. He said proudly, "Take a look at this first." "This is..." Shui Mingzi was a little stunned. He picked up the jade box with a strange expression. When he opened the jade box, he saw a golden light flashing inside. It was a 10,000-year-old human essence. He was stunned for a long while before he came back to his senses. He hurriedly closed the jade box and said, "I'm willing to serve Taoist Xiao Hua for 1,000 years, all right." Xiao Hua accepted Shui Mingzi's blood oath. Seeing that Shui Mingzi was about to return the jade box to him, he said with a smile, "I'll bestow this item to you." No way." Shui Mingzi's mouth fell open. He couldn't believe his ears. "Taoist Xiao, this item, I told you to take it, so take it." Xiao Hua was displeased. He took out another jade box and threw it to Ao Zhantian. "I just happened to get some. Take it as a greeting gift." Ao Zhantian had been curious for a long time. He took the jade box and hurriedly opened it to take a look. His eyes flashed with astonishment. He didn't stand on ceremony and hurriedly accepted the jade box. He bowed and said, "Taoist Xiao's fortune is truly beyond our reach. We've searched several spell formations, but we couldn't find any useful ones. I didn't expect Taoist Xiao to obtain such a bountiful harvest in such a short period of time. I thank Taoist Xiao for his generous gift." "And you're welcome." Xiao Hua waved his hand. "I don't have many of these items. You've all gotten a bargain. Thank you, Taoist Xiao." Seeing that Ao Zhantian accepted the jade box, Shui Mingzi hurriedly hid it away. "You all have your own rewards." Xiao Hua looked at the curious nascent soul cultivators and said with an indifferent expression, "However, I can only bestow them to you after the Jadestige meeting." "Thank you, Senior." Why did a group of nascent soul cultivators come to Jadestige Mountain? Wasn't it to obtain some rewards? Since Xiao Hua had a treasure that even nascent soul late-stage cultivators liked, what was 1,000 years of service to him? Xiao Hua kept the seal of overturning the sea. The Herculean centipede bared its fangs and brandished its claws beside Xiao Hua, as if it was showing off. When Xiao Hua opened his Taoist robe, it obediently flew back into it. "Taoist Xiao, your demonic pet is truly powerful. If you refine it for another 100 years, I'm afraid it'll be able to compete with an upper 4th grade essence force cultivator." Shui Mingzi couldn't help but exclaim. Xiao Hua smiled and replied, "How would I have the time to refine it? Let it cultivate by itself. Shui Mingzi opened his mouth as if to say something, but he stopped himself. Taoist Xiao, what should we do now? Ao Zhantian said with a bitter expression. I can't help Taoist Xiao with my injuries on Jadestage Mountain. There's no need for you to help. Xiao Hua's body flashed with golden light again, and the mountain river's seal flew out. He said, come in and rest. I'll let you out once we leave Jadestage Mountain. This Ao Zhantian wasn't like Su Tingzi. He frowned and said, if I enter the nation weapon, won't my life follow Taoist Xiao? If Taoist Xiao dies on Jadestage Mountain, won't I also be doomed? If you don't go in, can you walk out of Jadestage Mountain alive? Xiao Hua replied. Moreover, do you think you can live longer than me? Shui Mingzi was also hesitant. He asked, Taoist Xiao, this nation weapon is used by Confucian cultivators to suppress our Taoist sections. Although we don't mind going in, can it suppress dozens of us at the same time? It's only 30 or so, no problem. Xiao Hua said confidently. This junior is willing to go in. The injured nascent soul cultivator hurriedly said, as if he wanted to redeem himself by doing good deeds, but also as if he was really afraid of dying inside the formation. Xiao Hua waved his hand, and a stream of dragon qi rushed out, immediately sucking him in. Of course, at the same time, Xiao Hua pointed his hand and landed on the top of his head. When he lost consciousness, he used his mind to send him into the space. Although there was a first, the others were still hesitant. After all, this was different from swearing a blood oath and being controlled for 1,000 years. This was putting their lives in the hands of others. However, just as they were hesitating, a thunderous boom came from the distant horizon. Everyone looked up and saw the blood-red sky in the distance collapsing one after another. Between the collapses, there were thousands of flashes of lightning. After the blood-red sky collapsed, it turned into a blood-red stream that swept toward everyone. Damn Star-Lord Hall! Xiao Hua saw this, and how could he not know what the Star-Lord Hall was planning? This was not much different from the Star-Lord Defense Formation on the Yaotai Mountain. They both wanted to kill most of the Taoist cultivators, leaving only those who had the means to escape death. Xiao Hua swept his gaze and said coldly, this old man doesn't have time to waste with you. The formation has already begun to close, so this old man is going to find a way out. Senior, please wait a moment, this junior is willing to go in. A group of panicked cultivators hurriedly called out. They knew in their hearts that it was better to let Xiao Hua lead them alone rather than having so many people search in a mess. Xiao Hua's abilities were unpredictable, and his chances of survival were much higher than theirs. Come in. Xiao Hua sucked that person into the space again. This time, the others were finally moved, and in a short while, 35 nascent soul cultivators were sucked into the space. This one will go in as well. Ao Zhantian narrowed his eyes and looked at the torrential flood in the distance. His eyes were filled with helplessness, and he looked at Shui Mingzi. How could Shui Mingzi let Xiao Hua suspect him? Naturally, he tactfully said, no problem, this old man is afraid that this old man is powerless to escape from this collapsed formation, so I can only accompany fellow Taoist Ao. I'll have to trouble Taoist Xiao for everything. Please. Xiao Hua was overjoyed when he saw the two late nascent soul cultivators enter the trap. As he spoke, 2 streams of dragon qi swept the two into the space. After entering Xiao Hua's space, not to mention nascent soul cultivators, even spirit-severing cultivators were nothing but food for him. After sucking in dozens of nascent soul cultivators, Xiao Hua didn't have time to raise his head to the sky and laugh. His figure immediately floated up and flew in the opposite direction of the collapsed formation. It was as if the entire space had collapsed. Xiao Hua had only flown for a short while when intense thunderclaps flashed in all directions. All kinds of bloody light flourished, and the aura of destruction became increasingly powerful. Senior, save me. In front of Xiao Hua's right hand, the cultivator named Xiong Yi was in an extremely sorry state. His Taoist robe was askew, and his hair was also disheveled. A small flying shuttle flickered under his feet as he rushed toward Xiao Hua. Looking behind Xiong Yi, The bloody red torrential flood created a wave of over 10 meters tall, covering the sky and covering the earth as it chased after him. Xiao Hua frowned and a whirlwind appeared under his feet. His figure turned into a gust of wind as he swept in front of Xiong Yi. With a wave of his hand, a golden light swept up Xiong Yi, and then he soared into the sky again. Just as Xiao Hua flew away, boom! In the place where Xiong Yi had just flown past, the space around him shattered. Lightning flashed and turned into a clear torrential flood. Xiao Hua still couldn't release his divine sense, but he had a feeling that this clear torrential flood was definitely not ordinary. He definitely couldn't touch even half a drop of it. Many thanks, Senior. After being rescued by Xiao Hua, Xiong Yi felt like he was flying forward like lightning. He had temporarily escaped his predicament and hurriedly expressed his thanks. Chapter 36-29. Hearing this, Xiao Hua withdrew his gaze and replied indifferently, "You're welcome." After he finished speaking, his heart skipped a beat and he asked, "Are there any other cultivators ahead?" "No." Xiong Yi answered honestly, "I've been flying for a long time and haven't seen any cultivators." Hearing this, Xiao Hua thought for a moment and asked, "You? How did you follow Hua de Jinren?" Hearing Xiao Hua ask about the ambush, Xiong Yi didn't dare to hide anything and hurriedly told him the whole story. As Xiao Hua expected, Hua Jinren had the same plan as Xiao Hua. In addition to obtaining treasures in the Jade Pavilion Conference, he also wanted to win over a group of nascent soul cultivators. Therefore, long before the blood-red star streaked across the sky, there were already a dozen nascent soul cultivators gathered in the defensive formation of the Jade Mountain. Including Ao Zhantian and Shui Mingzi, there were already more than 30 cultivators in the defensive formation of the Sand Island. Taoist Huda seemed to have heard of the famous mother-child spirit fruit in the Sand Continent, so he was able to find it before Xiao Hua. Unfortunately, Fairy Jing beat him to it, so Taoist Huda and the others were left empty-handed. Just as Ao Zhantian had said, they had searched for a long time, but to no avail. When the ominous star appeared, dozens of cultivators were sucked into the blood-red light. When they reappeared, they found that apart from a few people who disappeared, most of them were still together. Therefore, Hua Jinren immediately discussed with Ao Zhantian and Shui Mingzi to besiege Xiao Hua. Xiong Yi didn't know what the three of them discussed. Xiong Yi wanted to leave early, but he didn't dare to because of Hua Jinren's fierce reputation. In the end, Xiao Hua defeated these cultivators in one fell swoop. "So, you didn't see Fairy Jing and Taoist Yuan Qing?" Xiao Hua asked. Xiong Yi nodded. "Yes, the female cultivator who got the Ren Jing and the male cultivator who was with you didn't appear here. So, this is only a point of the defensive formation. It's not the whole formation." Xiao Hua instantly thought of the space he appeared in before. There were no cultivators inside. Xiong Yi hurriedly shouted, Yes, that's right. I thought about it for a long time. This must be the only place that collapsed. As long as we find the way out, we can escape." "And I understand. If that's the case, I have a 60% chance of escaping." Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed as he looked into the distance and nodded. "However, it's very inconvenient for this old man to bring you along. Senior, Junior is willing to work for Senior." Xiong Yi was used to Hua Jinren's face. Xiao Hua's little tail had just been exposed, and he immediately agreed. That. In the end, Xiao Hua was not as thick-skinned as Taoist Huda. He said somewhat embarrassedly, "Xiong Yi, you misunderstood. What I mean is, Senior, you misunderstood as well." Xiong Yi said with a smile, "In fact, I came to the Yaodai meeting on one hand to get the rare treasure. On the other hand, I hope to find some useful people. After all, on the hidden immortal continent, there are very few Confucian cultivators that we can trust. It's best to find a Taoist cultivator to help us. As for the third objective, if I can meet an expert like Senior, I don't mind submitting to you. To tell you the truth, I met a fellow cultivator in the late stage of the nascent soul stage in the early stages of the Jade Pavilion meeting. I chatted with him for a while. Although I didn't agree at that time, I already had a plan in mind." "Grand Mist Ancestor?" Xiao Hua asked in a low voice after pondering for a while. Xiong Yi was startled, and then his expression changed slightly. He said somewhat unnaturally, "Could it be that Senior is also, Grand Mist Ancestor is Grand Mist Ancestor, I am Xiao." Xiao Hua said indifferently, "I won't force fellow cultivator Xiong, no, no." Xiong Yi breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, how could he have any other choice? He hurriedly said with a smile, "I once established a country, but later the country's monarch was bewitched by the Buddhist sect. I was disheartened and no longer paid attention to it. Now that I am free, I can serve Senior." "Good." Xiao Hua nodded. "Close your eyes. I will suppress you into the mountain river seal. After we leave the Yaotai mountain, you can follow me." This. Xiong Yi naturally hesitated, but after a moment he closed his eyes and said, "I'll have to trouble Senior." Xiao Hua didn't say anything and immediately put him back into the mountain and river seal. Then he looked around. This place was similar to the void, so he had an inexplicable feeling of familiarity in his heart. After a short while he found something strange. However, this strange thing seemed to be mobile. Before Xiao Hua could fly over, it immediately disappeared. It was exactly the same as when Xiao Hua mysteriously appeared in Huada's encirclement. All of a sudden, around Xiao Hua, several clear streams of blood red rushed out like a waterfall. Although those streams of water weren't large, wherever they went, the entire space collapsed. The streams rushed out in a strange way, and Xiao Hua was caught unprepared. His figure flashed and dodged, but several drops of blood still splashed on his Taoist robe. Xiao Hua did not care. This kind of clear stream was powerful, but under his protective golden light, how could a few drops of clear stream pose a threat to him? However, when those several drops of clear water fell, a sizzling sound rang out. The golden light protecting Xiao Hua's body was actually annihilated in an instant, revealing an enormous flaw. The clear water actually seeped into the surface of Xiao Hua's body. Ouch! Xiao Hua was shocked that such a situation would occur due to his carelessness. Xiao Hua's Taoist robe was also torn in an instant, and a heart-wrenching pain came from the clear stream. Xiao Hua's abnormally strong body was actually invaded by this clear stream. Pooh! Xiao Hua hurriedly opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of thick true energy. It landed on the corroded part of his body, and he barely managed to grab the few drops of clear stream. When Xiao Hua opened his transcendence vision, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He saw that within these drops of blood-red liquid, there were strands of dark red lines. Between the lines of lines, there were many small dots that contained great power. Xiao Hua was familiar with these small dots of light. It was the power of starlight. As for the dark red lines, Xiao Hua had seen them before. They were actually poison mixed with the power of the netherworld. Damn it! Xiao Hua cursed angrily. The Confucian cultivator's arrangement was truly ruthless. Even his body, which had been tempered for many years, was unable to withstand it, let alone an ordinary cultivator. Even Ao Zhantian wouldn't be able to escape easily when he encountered the clear stream of clear stream. Of course, Xiao Hua was only lamenting. This wasn't the first time he had encountered the Confucian cultivator's ruthlessness. His current plan was to escape from this place. There wasn't much time left for Xiao Hua, and the space he could escape was also limited. The confidence he had before had leaked out too much, and an indescribable sense of fear emerged from the bottom of his heart. What seemed like an ordinary escape had developed into a test of life and death. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. At the crucial moment, he opened his transcendence vision. However, all he saw with his transcendence vision was blood red. His vision was filled with resplendent starlight, and it was even inferior to the naked eye. How could he see the exit that could appear at any time? Helpless, Xiao Hua could only close his transcendence vision again. He could see with his naked eye and fly in a certain direction based on his intuition. Suddenly, Xiao Hua's heart trembled. He recalled the place where he had first entered the defensive formation. Previously, when he heard Xiong Yi's description, he subconsciously thought that he had entered the defensive formation directly like them. However, now that he thought about it before he was surrounded by Taoist Huada and the others, He seemed to have stayed in a certain space for a short period of time. Moreover, that space also had a blood-red light, and it was extremely similar to the space he was in now. However, it didn't have much starlight. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua suddenly raised his head to look at the starry sky. Sure enough, the ominous star with a tail was emitting a strange and mysterious light. The stars around this ominous star were abnormally resplendent, and this resplendent light was flashing with a bloody aura. One by one, the tails grew out of these stars. Needless to say, these stars should all be a part of this defensive formation. If others look at this place from the stars, they should also be a star that is also burning with brilliance. The space I entered earlier should also be a part of the defensive formation. However, that part is between the stars, or perhaps it's the fault of the defensive formation. Xiao Hua suddenly realized. That's right, it's there. Since Xiao Hua understood, it was very easy for him to find the place he came out from. Looking at the sky, there was clearly no mark. Even if one's divine sense swept over, it would be impossible to find that place different from other places. However, Xiao Hua's eyes could see that it was the place he came from. Not good. Xiao Hua identified the direction and immediately cried out bitterly in his heart, because that place was already on the verge of the collapse of the defensive formation. The blood-red clear stream in the space would annihilate his only way out in a few moments. Xiao Hua activated the lightning escape technique without hesitation. Although the wind escape technique had the advantage in this short distance, Xiao Hua understood that his cultivation of the wind escape technique was far inferior to the lightning escape technique. At this time, if he used his full strength, there was still hope that he could arrive before the space collapsed. Rumble! Tens of thousands of tiny threads of lightning appeared on the surface of Xiao Hua's body. Xiao Hua turned into a bolt of lightning and rushed towards the exit of the defensive formation. However, Xiao Hua was already going all out. The nascent soul in his body was also rubbing its hands anxiously. Several bolts of lightning entered the void to help Xiao Hua, but the blood-red stream soared into the sky. As long as it fell, Xiao Hua's path of survival would be cut off. Although it was not certain that Xiao Hua would die, the chances were slim. Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua, quickly help me. At such a critical moment, Xiao Hua's heart suddenly brightened and he cried out in his mind. Little Sheng is coming. Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua waved his hands, opened his mouth, and recited, drums and thunder resound, swords and spears tremble in the wind and frost. For generals admonish, 10 generals start first. As soon as this inexplicable poem came out, it immediately turned into a bolt of lightning condensed from armor inscriptions. Inside Xiao Hua's lower dantian, the 5 qi righteous thunder immediately rolled. Following this bolt of lightning, it rushed into Xiao Hua's body and fell on the surface of his body. Boom! Xiao Hua felt his body become light. A feeling of soaring immortality arose spontaneously. Immediately, Xiao Hua's speed suddenly increased by several times. Like a stream of light, he rushed into the sky without anything special. Chapter 3630. What's especially strange is that Xiao Hua's entire body immediately disappears where he landed, only leaving behind faint lightning threads at the edge of the void. Those lightning threads only flashed for half a second before the bloody stream fell and all the lightning threads were torn apart. The space also shattered. Damn it! So close, a passageway like a pillar of light appeared in front of Xiao Hua. Without Xiao Hua activating the lightning escape technique, his entire body began to flow in the passageway. However, the pressure in the passageway was abnormal and there was also a rapid tearing force, causing his body to be pulled out of shape. Xiao Hua activated his magic power to resist, feeling extremely lucky in his heart. If I didn't use the 5 qi righteous thunder to activate the lightning escape technique, not only would it be impossible for my lightning escape technique to reach the realm of leaping thunder, it would also be impossible for me to break free from the defensive formation. Woo! Just as Xiao Hua changed his mind, the pillar of light disappeared again. Xiao Hua's body lightened and he looked around again. Sure enough, all around him was crimson red light, not a single star. Phew! Xiao Hua let out a long sigh of relief. Previously, he used all his strength to activate the lightning escape technique and forcefully rushed into the realm of leaping thunder 3 realms. His entire body showed a kind of fatigue, as if the realm of lightning escape technique's 3rd grade was far from what a Yuanian cultivator could control. However, just as Xiaohua let out a sigh of relief, a gust of wind rolled up beside him and what he had experienced before happened again. Damn it, can't you let me breathe a sigh of relief? Xiaohua sensed that his entire body was bound by a powerful force and knew that the fault in space didn't allow cultivators to stay. He couldn't help but smile bitterly and curse. When the force disappeared, Xiaohua opened his eyes and saw everything in front of him clearly. He couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, not to mention that Xiaohua had just escaped from the wolf's den and entered the tiger's den. The embarrassed Huozhenren was forced to take out the jade pendant by Xiaohua. He spat out a mouthful of true qi and layers of inscriptions gushed out from the jade pendant to cover him. Soon after, a pillar of true qi emerged from the void and carried Huozhenren into it and disappeared. When the pillar of true qi disappeared, Huozhenren's figure appeared above a layer of blood-red clouds. The blood-red clouds looked like cotton wool that covered the sky. There was no end to it at all. Above the clouds, there were groups of immortal soldiers in bright armor patrolling the area. As soon as Huozhenren revealed himself, he immediately attracted the attention of the nearby immortal soldiers. The leading immortal soldier held a sickle-like weapon in his hand and shouted, "Where did this cultivator come from? Is this a place where you can break in?" Cough cough. Taoist Master Huoda coughed twice. He raised his eyes to look at this group of 3rd-grade origin energy immortal soldiers. Raising the jade pendant in his hand, he indifferently said, "This old man is a star general under Hall Master Kong. It is precisely on the Hall Master's orders to enter the Jade Pavilion meeting. Your humble servant greets, Sir Star General." The captain's eyes lit up when he saw the jade pendant in Huozhenren's hand. He immediately became respectful and clasped his hands. "This is my duty. I hope Sir can forgive me." "Yes, I understand." Huozhenren put away the jade pendant. Raising his eyes to look all around, he asked, "If this old man is not mistaken, this place is Star Lord Wellwood Sprite Shangguanyi Ran's jurisdiction. Quickly bring me to see Star Lord Shangguanyi Ran." "What Sir said is correct. This place is precisely General Wellwood Sprite's jurisdiction." That immortal soldier saw Huozhenren was very familiar with the Jade Mountain Range. His last doubts were all gone, and he hastily replied, "However, General Wellwood Sprite has already perished inside the array. Now, General Wooddragon is in charge." "What? Sir Shangguan, he truly has fallen?" Huozhenren turned pale with fright, practically shouting in disbelief, Who has such magic energy?" However, when he asked this, Huozhenren suddenly thought of something and hastily shouted, Quickly bring me to see Sir Linghu." That immortal soldier's face showed a difficult expression, and he said in a low voice, "Sir Star General, your humble servant is here to patrol. Without Sir Star General's orders, I absolutely do not dare leave. Furthermore, my Wellwood Sprite Star Array brothers have only recently come into contact with Sir Linghu. Your servant does not dare." "Impudent!" Huozhenren furiously roared. "This old man has an important matter to report to Hall Master Kong. This is an urgent matter. If there is a delay, can you bear the responsibility?" The immortal soldier hesitated and hastily asked, "I wonder what Sir's important matter is? You are not qualified to know." Huozhenren sneered. "However, this old man can reveal a little. If this matter is not false, it should be related to the fall of General Wellwood Sprite." "Good, sir, please follow your humble servant." When the immortal soldier heard that it was related to Shangguanyi Ran's death, he did not dare to be negligent. He hastily ordered the rest of the immortal soldiers to continue patrolling. He took out a flying boat and placed it in the air. He invited Huozhenren to board the flying boat, and he himself drove the flying boat to rush into the clouds. The flying boat produced clouds and carried the two of them to a place at lightning speed. Above the crimson clouds, there were many patrolling immortal soldiers. There were also many immortal generals riding flying beasts and patrolling everywhere. Huo standing on the flying boat naturally attracted the attention of the patrolling immortal soldiers. However, the immortal soldier driving the flying boat took out a small triangular flag from his bosom and stuck it on the bow of the boat. Those immortal soldiers and immortal generals who were about to fly over stopped. After the time to drink a cup of tea, more and more soldiers and horses appeared in front of them. Moreover, there was a row of tents above the clouds. The immortal soldier did not dare to drive the flying boat again. He asked Huo to disembark from the flying boat and said with a smile, "Sir, please wait a moment. This is the border between Wood Sprite Well and Wood Dragon Horn. This humble servant does not dare to cross. Sir Ling Hu should be in the barracks. This humble servant will send a message." After saying that, the immortal soldier pulled the triangular flag from the bow of the boat. He opened his mouth and a mouthful of true qi fell on the triangular flag. The small flag turned into a streamer of light and disappeared into the barracks. A moment later, a tall immortal general flew out from inside the barracks. In his hand was that triangular flag. Looking at the immortal soldier and Huo, he coldly said, "Who are you waiting for to issue the command flag? Is there some urgent military matter?" Reporting to Sir, this humble servant is Wood Sprite Well's 13 Barracks 7th Squad Captain, Zhou Hong. The command flag was issued by this humble servant. That immortal soldier hastily bowed and saluted, "This is Hall Master Kong's Star General. He has news of the death of our Wood Sprite Well's general. And you and the others follow Moja." When that immortal general heard this, he did not dare be neglectful. Turning around, he brought Huo and Zhou Hong to fly into the barracks. Entering the barracks, Huo gaze swept around. Seeing the murderous aura all around and many unkind gazes looking at him, he could not help but sneer in his heart. His arrogant gaze swept back one by one, forcing those immortal soldiers and immortal generals to look elsewhere. "Humph, no more than origin energy 3rd or 4th grade strength, yet you unexpectedly dare provoke this old man. If it was not for the Jade Mountain..." Huo was defeated again and again. His heart was very sullen. Naturally, he would not put these cultivators with lower cultivations in his eyes. His heart secretly pondered. Not long after, that immortal general brought the two of them directly to the center's largest tent. "You and the others wait here," that immortal general indifferently instructed. He himself was about to enter when the Huo to the side raised his hand. Holding a jade pendant in his hand, he smiled and said, "I have the Hall Master personally bestowed the Star General writ. I can directly meet any general below the Hall Master. I think we don't need to wait outside the tent. My general's military orders are strict. Unless the Hall Master personally comes, or the Hall Master's personal secret order, no one can approach the Central Army tent." That immortal general glanced at Huo and proudly said, "Not to mention, although you are the Hall Master's Star General, you have the identity of a Taoist cultivator. How could I dare to let you and the others in?" Impudent! Huo was ashamed and angry. He shouted, "Hall Master's Star General writ is useful in the entire hidden immortal continent. How can it not be useful in your Wood Dragon's camp? What intentions do you all have? Do you all still place the Hall Master in your eyes?" Hearing Huo so arrogant, that immortal general's complexion slightly changed. Just as he was about to speak, a thunderclap suddenly sounded in his ear. "Impudent, who dares to make a racket outside the Central Army tent? Where is the Minister of Justice?" When that immortal general heard, his face showed respect. He said in a low voice, "Reporting to General, it was your servant who brought..." Not waiting for that immortal general to finish speaking, Huo immediately put on a smiling face and raised his voice. "Ling Hu Darren, your servant is the Huoda Star General under Hall Master Kong. Long time no see. Is General style still the same?" That voice was slightly surprised, but he saw the Central Army tent's tent door open. A 5 chi tall lean man wearing leather armor and holding a sword in his bosom walked out. Looking up and down, he coldly said, "Huoda Star General? Is it you who is making a racket in front of the Central Army tent?" Huo looked at that man, but he did not recognize him. He nodded and said, "Your servant is not making a racket, but your servant has the Hall Master's Star General command in his hand. Furthermore, your servant has information regarding Shangguan Daren's fall. I only ask you, is it you who is making a racket in front of the Central Army tent?" That man interrupted Huo Jinren, coldly saying. Huo Jinren looked at the man's cold expression. He could only brace himself and say, "Correct, just now it was your servant." According to the 4th article of the military order, those who make a racket in front of the Central Army tent without reason will be beheaded without pardon. That man recited word by word. Immediately, he raised the sword in his bosom. Pung. The sword emitted a cold light, and the sword hilt again gave birth to inscriptions. When these inscriptions rolled, an ice-cold killing intent rushed forth from the surrounding barracks. This killing intent made Huo Jinren have no choice but to shrink his neck. Clang! The sword in the man's hand let out a cry. A cold light rushed out from the sword's scabbard, directly slashing towards Huo Jinren. Even as strong as Huo Jinren was a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, in the instant the sword fell, the several chi of space around his body was completely confined. He simply did not have any possibility of dodging, as if he could only be tied up. Huo Jinren turned pale with fright. A brilliance flashed above his head, and his nascent soul rushed out. His hands rubbed together, and a brilliance was born, wanting to block the sword. Unfortunately, the sword was incomparably sharp. The brilliance was immediately cut in half by the sword's edge. Chapter 36-31. Lord Linghu. Taoist Master Huda's nascent soul shrieked. That voice carried a timid tone as he said, "Your humble servant has news of Lord Shangguan Yiran's fall. This is a major military matter. If you dare avenge a private grudge delaying Lord Hallmaster's matters, not to mention Lord Hallmaster will not forgive you, even you 28 Star Lords will fall one by one. Stop!" A shout came from inside the tent. That man's sword stopped in midair as if cast from iron. Although Taoist Master Huda's body could not budge, the cold sweat on his forehead was already dripping. "Let them in." Following the dignified voice from inside the tent, the man put away his sword and retreated to the side. That immortal general raised his hand and said with a fake smile, "Star General Huda, please." Then he threw the triangular banner to Zhou Hong and said, "You go in too." Zhou Hong was very terrified. Taking the banner, he hastily saluted, "Your humble servant has been ordered by Lord Star General to send him here. Now, since Lord Wood Dragon wants to see Lord Star General, your humble servant should return to patrol." "Did you not hear Lord say to let you all go in?" The immortal general coldly smiled and said, "Yes, Lord." Zhou Hong did not dare argue. Answering, he hastily lowered his head and followed Taoist Master Huda into the tent. That Taoist Master Huda originally had an untamed heart. Now, he suddenly hung in suspense. He was Kong Hongwu's Star General. Although his position could not compare to Star Lords like Jing Mushuan and Wood Dragon, his position in Star Lord Hall was somewhat aloof. Ordinarily, he did not need to have any dealings with these Star Lords. However, he had interacted with Jing Mushuan a few times and was considered familiar. He actually did not have any dealings with Wood Dragon. However, he had heard Jing Mushuan talk about the Wood Dragon. Therefore, he knew that the Wood Dragon was Kong Hongwu's confidant. Jing Mushuan hadn't said anything bad about the Wood Dragon. However, the disdain in her tone was very obvious. But as long as one was human, there would always be preconceived notions. Admittedly, Taoist Master Huda had never seen Wood Dragon before, but based on Jing Mushuan's words, he already had a somewhat bad impression of Wood Dragon. This time, he had heard that the Wood Dragon well had perished, and that the Wood Dragon horn had taken over. So, he couldn't help but feel a little indignant. Unfortunately, Taoist Master Huda hadn't even seen the Wood Dragon yet. So, the army outside the tent had already given him a show of strength. And this had made him lose face. Moreover, he couldn't help but have a bad feeling in his heart when he heard that the Wood Dragon had given Zhou Hong money. Sure enough, when Huo Jinren entered the tent, he saw that the inside of the tent was very simple. Other than a jade table, there was a pot on it. There were a few ordinary-looking token arrows in it. It was the middle-aged scholar sitting behind the jade table. The Confucian scholar held an ancient book in his hand and was reading it with great interest. There was not a trace of any special aura around his body. Even his eyes that were staring at the ancient book and his hand that was holding the book, other than being especially long and slender, he was no different from an ordinary student. Hua Zhenren did not dare to be negligent. He walked to the center of the tent, clasped his hands, and respectfully said, "General Jin Yuda greets General Ling Hu." Zhou Hong behind Taoist Master Hua hastily knelt down. His mouth trembled as he said in a low voice, Little Zhou Hong greets General." Who would have thought that Ling Hu Pairen wouldn't even respond? His eyes didn't even move away from the book. Taoist Master Hua awkwardly clasped his hands and stood there. He was somewhat at a loss. He admittedly had practiced for thousands of years. That fierce gaze seemed to be able to penetrate Taoist Master Hua's body. How can you casually make a racket in the military camp? Did this general allow you to speak? Taoist Master Hua's hand once again froze in place, not daring to move. He was afraid to hear that, "Where is the army advisor?" Fortunately, Ling Hu Pairen did not call for the army advisor. Rather, he extended his hand, and from who knows where, he pulled out a jade pupil tablet and tossed it to Zhou Hong. He faintly said, "Take a look, yes?" Zhou Hong very carefully received it. Clear light flashed in his eyes, but a moment later, his face was deathly pale. Large beads of sweat dripped down his forehead. Immediately he kowtowed, "General, spare me." This little one did not know that this Sir's Star General Command tablet had already been abolished. This little one did not receive the order at all. "Where is the army advisor?" Ling Hu Pairen did not waste words, ordering, "Sir." The army advisor's hand clasped a sword as he entered. Ling Hu Pairen took out a token arrow from the token pot and said, "Go investigate whether or not this Zhou Hong spoke the truth. If it is, see who dares to delay the military. Bring that person's head. If Zhou Hong is lying, bring Zhou Hong's head." After he finished speaking, an inscription flew out of Ling Hu Pairen's mouth and landed on the token arrow. That token arrow floated with a bloodlight and flew into the army advisor's hand. "Sir." The army advisor received the order. He extended his hand and dragged the trembling Zhou Hong out of the tent. The pitiful Zhou Hong. Any way it was put, he was still a third-grade essence energy cultivator, equivalent to a Taoist golden core cultivator. Now, he was taken away like a little chick. His Taoist Hua sucked in a cold breath. He understood in his heart that this was not Ling Hu Pairen trying to intimidate him. Rather, he had rashly entered Yaodai Mountain, offending Kong Hongwu. Thinking of Ling Hu Pairen's ruthlessness, Taoist Hua did not dare say a word. He only clutched the Star General Command tablet that he had previously been proud of. Now it had already become trash. He calmly stood there, the veins on his hands slightly protruding. "You are now a Taoist cultivator. According to my military discipline, trespassing into my army is to be beheaded." Ling Hu Pairen set down the scroll in his hand and indifferently said, "However, you were previously Lord Hall Master's Star General. You have made some contributions to my Star Lord Hall. I cannot arbitrarily decide." Phew! Hearing this, Taoist Hua's hanging heart immediately settled. The veins on his hand disappeared, and he hastily bowed, "Many thanks for General Ling Hu's tolerance." "Would Lord Hall Master?" Ling Hu Pairen rose and walked to the front of the command table. He fished out a diamond-shaped command tablet from his bosom and used his hand to pat the top of his head. Three-colored true chi bubbled forth, falling onto the command tablet. The command tablet gave birth to an auspicious cloud that floated behind the command table. Immediately, a wisp of overwhelming chi emerged from the void and gathered above the auspicious cloud. In an instant, Kong Hongwu's figure appeared. "This general greets Lord Hall Master." Ling Hu Pairen bowed in salute. Taoist Hua did not dare be neglectful, also saluting, "This general greets Lord Hall Master." Kong Hongwu waved his hand and said, "Ling Hu, rise." "Yes, Lord." Ling Hu Pairen straightened up, no longer speaking. Kong Hongwu's gaze swept past Taoist Hua and coldly said, This old man is Star-Lord Hall's Hallmaster, but you are not Star-Lord Hall's Star General. There is no need to call yourself this general. This old man knows that my Star-Lord Hall's temple is small and cannot accommodate a great deity like the Taoist. The Taoist can freely search for his own destiny on this Jade Mountain. Lord Hallmaster? Taoist Huda's face was deathly pale. He said in a low voice, "This old man knows that he has disturbed Lord Hallmaster's plans. This crime cannot be forgiven. This old man does not seek to obtain Lord Hallmaster's forgiveness. This old man only wishes to report a few secrets that this old man knows to Lord Hallmaster. Afterwards, this old man himself will enter the array to meet his death." "Speak." Kong Hongwu's face was still calm as water as before, indifferently saying. Taoist Huda did not dare beg for forgiveness too much, nor did he dare speak of his previous contributions. He was afraid that Kong Hongwu would not give him the chance to speak. Now that he was allowed to speak, his heart was already secretly delighted. He hastily said, "Good, Lord Hallmaster knows. This old man discovered a cultivator who concealed his cultivation at the Jade Pavilion gathering. Furthermore, this old man previously knew that General Jing Mushuan fell inside the Imperial Array. In all likelihood, Lord Hallmaster has not yet found the true culprit, so this old man braved death to report to Lord Hallmaster." "Who?" Kong Hongwu's brows trembled. It was as Taoist Huda said. In his fury, Kong Hongwu already dispatched people to begin investigating the truth. However, the entire Jade Mountain was inside the Great Array. Especially after the array changed, with Jing Mushuan falling, the immortal soldiers and immortal generals in the Star Array were already somewhat disorganized. The news of Taoist Huda's Star General token being crippled did not reach Zhou Hong's place. This was clear proof. Furthermore, the immortal generals that had seen Xiaohua were more or less killed by Xiaohua. Kong Hongwu honestly could not find the Xiaohua that killed Jing Mushuan for the time being. Xiaohua! Taoist Huda did not dare beat around the bush, directly saying Xiaohua's name. As expected, it was him. Kong Hongwu's eyes slightly narrowed, as if this did not exceed his expectations. Furthermore, Linghu Pairan's brows rose, his eyes flashing with a strange light. Taoist Huda was slightly startled. This information was his final straw. Now, it seemed that it truly was a straw. He hastily shouted, "Lord Hallmaster is wise. It is Xiaohua." Chapter 36-32. Hearing Taoist Master Huda be so certain, Kong Hongwu looked at him with interest, indifferently asking, "How do you know?" Taoist Master Huda was delighted in his heart, hastily recounting Xiaohua's actions in detail. Finally, he added, "This one heard that General Shangguan was killed, and Xiaohua just happened to be nearby. This guy is most adept at hiding his cultivation. This must be his doing." "Linghu, what do you think?" Kong Hongwu seemed to have thought of something, unexpectedly smiling as he asked Linghu Pairan. Linghu Pairan glanced at Taoist Master Huda, bowing to Kong Hongwu. This one is more interested in Xiaohua, however. It seems that there is already no meaning now. This one will personally kill him. Use his head as a sacrifice to General Shangguan. This one is also willing to atone for his crimes and assist General Linghu in killing Xiaohua, to avenge General Shangguan. Taoist Master Huda immediately seized the opportunity, bowing as he spoke. "Atone for your crimes?" Kong Hongwu coldly looked at Taoist Master Huda, not knowing what he was thinking. Just at this moment, the Linghu Pairan to the side suddenly interjected, "Lord Hallmaster, although Star General Huda was momentarily bewitched by the treasure, seeing as he has done many things for my Star Lord Hall over the years, even if there is no merit, there is hard work. Furthermore, he entered the Jade Pavilion gathering, and by a freak combination of factors, he brought such important news to my Star Lord Hall. In this one's opinion, it would be better to let him go kill Xiaohua, to atone for his crimes." Good. Kong Hongwu slightly nodded, saying, "Jin Yuda, if you can kill Xiaohua, this old man will withdraw this order. You will still be my Star Lord Hall's Star General. Furthermore, If you can reach a higher level of enlightenment and refine your fire Qi Chaoyuan to the realm of 5th rank origin energy, the position of Wellwood Dragon is not necessarily yours. Many thanks, Lord Hall Master. Taoist Master Huoda was overjoyed, hastily bowing in salute. This one will not disappoint Lord Hall Master. Go, this one awaits your good news. Kong Hongwu waved his hand and said, Yes, Lord Hall Master. Taoist Master Huoda rose, and Linghu Pairan earnestly said, Star General Huoda, this is your last chance. You must seize it. Once you leave the tent, there will be soldiers to escort Star General back. Thank you for your mercy, sir. I will repay you in the future. Huoda Taoist cupped his hands towards Linghu Pairan and turned to leave the tent. Before the soldiers came to lead him, Huoda Taoist saw that the adjunct who had just walked out of the tent had landed on a flying boat. In his hand was the head of an immortal general. From the looks of it, it was not Zhou Hong. When the adjunct's gaze swept over Huoda Taoist actually felt a slight chill on his neck. Inside the large tent, Kong Hongwu saw Taoist Huoda leave. He looked at Linghu Pairan with a smile and asked, Linghu, I didn't expect that Xiao Hua to be so powerful. Even Taoist Huoda isn't his match. It seems that I'm going to lose the bet with you earlier. Linghu Pairan also withdrew his previous seriousness and said with a smile, Could it be that Milord already knew of Xiao Hua's prowess and expelled Taoist Huoda from the Star Lord Hall first? This evil creature. Kong Hongwu snorted from his nose. He actually dared to disobey my arrangement and enter the Jade Pavilion meeting without permission. He deserves to be punished. Furthermore, he's still so bold at this time, wanting to borrow the hand of my Star Lord Hall to kill Xiao Hua. Could it be that he feels that I can't see through his thoughts? Linghu Pairan nevertheless smiled and said, It's true that he didn't listen to the arrangement. It's also true that he wanted to borrow the Jade Pavilion meeting to accumulate his own power. But if he wanted to borrow the Hall Master's hand to kill Xiao Hua, that might not necessarily be the truth. He merely walked through a few defensive arrays. How could he know that the cultivators nearby were powerful? According to his thinking, the only one who could kill Shangguan Yiran could only be Xiao Hua. He was forced into a corner by Xiao Hua and used the Star General command plate bestowed by the Hall Master to break free of the defensive array. Hearing that Shangguan Yiran was killed, he naturally wanted to claim credit. Of course, he must also be nervous in his heart, afraid of being punished by the Hall Master. You don't know how bold he is? Kong Hongwu shook his head and said, Didn't you hear? He actually covets the position of Star Lord. Such an important position of my Star Lord Hall, can it be left for him? A single Jade Pavilion meeting will undoubtedly reveal the greed of Dao sect cultivators. Those with low cultivations want to obtain spirit herbs from the Jade Pavilion meeting. Those with suitable cultivations want to obtain the lot of the State Preceptor. Those with high cultivations want to accumulate their own power and obtain strange treasures. They are fully aware that the Jade Pavilion meeting is controlled by my Star Lord Hall and that there is only a slim chance of survival. But for their greed, they did not hesitate to swallow the bait. Men die for wealth and birds die for food. The ancient saying is true. What Lord said is true. But if Huoda wants to become a Star Lord, he must first think of escaping from Xiao Hua's hands. Linghu Pairan narrowed his eyes and replied, Borrowing a knife to kill. Linghu, your calculations are quite shrewd. Kong Hongwu said with a smile. It's all thanks to Lord Hall Master's guidance. Linghu Pairan said with a smile, Fighting with Dao sect cultivators is not about strength, but about methods. It's endless fun. Are you not interested in this Xiao Hua? Kong Hongwu said, Hearing Huoda's words, this old man wants to personally see this Dao sect cultivator valued by Grand Mist Ancestor. Grand Mist Ancestor? Linghu Pairan raised his eyebrows and said indifferently, Since we can't accept him as a Star General, we can't let him leave the Jade Pavilion Mountain. This general is naturally very interested in him. Haha, if you want to make a move, you have to wait until Xiao Hua escapes from Huoda's hands alive. Kong Hongwu laughed. Unfortunately, this Sun, Moon, and Star 3 arrays can't compare to my Star Lord Hall's previous Imperial array. It's difficult to see the situation everywhere. Otherwise, this old man really wants to see the liveliness inside now. Although Xiao Hua is powerful, he can't be considered outstanding. Hearing Tail Fire Tiger Ouyang Jingran's message, as soon as the star array came out, she had an extremely powerful person gather over 100 Dao sect cultivators and kill many dissatisfied cultivators to obtain 70% of the treasures. That cultivator is called Master Sun Kong. He's a proud and arrogant person. Kong Hongwu naturally knew. He nodded and said, "Presumably, you also know this person." Dao sect cultivators often use the titles Child and Taoist Master. He disdains them and calls himself Master. His arrogance can be seen. So, Ouyang wants to subdue him and make him a star general. Impossible! Kong Hongwu shook his head. Previously, this old man also sent people over. This bastard simply didn't buy it. Star's son horse Taisha Zhanran also has a Zhang Daoran. Now he also stands out. Linghu Pairan said again. Kong Hongwu shook his head again. Although this Zhang Daoran didn't establish a country and is considered a Dao sect disciple indifferent to fame and fortune, he is extremely famous in Jingzhou. Long before this old man recruited Huada, I personally visited him. Unfortunately, I didn't meet him. This time, he can come to the Jade Pavilion gathering. I'm afraid it's related to that green nether dragon saliva. This kind of thing that even Huada doesn't listen to orders is absolutely tempting in the eyes of other Dao sect disciples. Hall Master is right. According to Taisha, that Zhang Daoran was recognized by Jingzhou's Dao sect disciples and was elected as their leader. Even if he wanted to decline, he couldn't. If nothing unexpected happens, he will ultimately run into Master Sun Kong. No, he should run into Star Plucking Child first. Kong Hongwu smiled. Star Plucking Child? That Yongzhou's Dao sect genius known to be the closest to out-of-body formation? Hearing Star Plucking Child's name, even Linghu Pairan's expression changed. He unexpectedly also came to the Jade Pavilion gathering? Ai, not bad. Kong Hongwu sighed. This old man is Star Lord Hall's Hall Master. Unexpectedly, I didn't even know that Star Plucking Child sneaked into Jade Mountain. This is truly a dereliction of duty. This isn't strange. Dao sect magic is strange of every description, far surpassing what we Confucian sect cultivators learn. Linghu Pairan smiled. Unfortunately, Dao sect magic inverts the cart before the horse. They only seek power but do not know their roots. They are far from the vast and majestic chi of our Confucian sect cultivators. Although Star Plucking Child is known to be a rare genius, compared to Hall Master, he is still far inferior. Don't compare this old man with those little dolls. Kong Hongwu didn't get angry and smiled. This old man is going. If you want to deal with Xiao Hua, you must be careful. If he can kill Shangguan, he can also kill you. You can't be careless. Many thanks for Hall Master's reminder. This general will be careful. Linghu Pairan bowed. Jing Mu Bao and the other soldiers are unconvinced in their hearts. If this general doesn't kill Xiao Hua and the others, how can they be convinced? After sending Hall Master off, this general will go take a look. Then, Kong Hongwu nodded slightly. Thousands of whirlpools swirled around his body. His entire body turned into nothingness. Along with a burst of qi, he gradually disappeared. After Kong Hongwu left, Linghu Pairan straightened up and walked out of the command tent. His gaze swept over the bloody head on the flagpole outside the tent. His figure floated up, crossing several rows of allied forces, and arrived at a place covered in clouds. Pooh! Linghu Pairan spat out a mouthful of true qi. The clouds within a radius of several dozen zhang were pushed aside, revealing a space covered in starlight. Looking at the several brilliant stars, a trace of a mysterious smile appeared on Linghu Pairan's face. As for Xiao Hua, he flew out from the void. Seeing the situation in front of him, he couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice. This was a huge sphere. Although only half of it was visible in the sky and the lower half couldn't be seen, this half was already so big that Xiao Hua couldn't see its edge. When Xiao Hua looked at the outside of the huge sphere, he saw a long, flat ribbon-like object surrounding the sphere. The ribbon looked fixed, but upon closer inspection, it was slowly rotating. When Xiaohua realized that his divine sense was not restricted in this place, he activated his divine sense again. He discovered that the ribbon was actually made up of huge rocks. If the huge rocks were on flat ground, they would be as big as a mountain. Xiaohua's divine sense was not restricted in this place, but when he activated his divine sense again, he discovered that the ribbon was actually made up of huge rocks. If those huge rocks were on flat ground, they would be as big as a mountain. Although this magnificent scene was astonishing, it wasn't enough to make Xiaohua exclaim in a low voice. Xiaohua was the most shocked because the scene here was quite similar to the scene when he accompanied Fairy Hong Xia to see the Kai family's ancestral shrine in Million Meng Mountains. Star, moon, starry sky. Could it be that there's a big secret hidden in it? Seeing the starry sky, Xiaohua couldn't help but be surprised. Chapter 36-33. Looking up at the seemingly endless starry sky, Xiaohua's heart was filled with doubt. He couldn't help but think to himself, my Dao sect has the heavenly Dao, and I have the heavenly Dao starry sky in my space. Even Xiaohua of the heavenly Dao hasn't made any significant progress in comprehending the mysteries of the heavenly Dao after nearly 200 years. Now, the heavenly Dao starry sky has appeared again and again in the Confucian cultivators formation. Oh, right, aren't the seals on Lu Yi and the others also made of star force? Star Moon Palace. That's right, there's also the Star Moon Palace. The Star Moon Palace that Zhu Qing mentioned. Just as Xiaohua was thinking, a giant boat slowly flew out from the side of the sphere. There were many cultivators standing on the boat. As soon as the boat appeared, several powerful divine senses swept out from the boat and landed on Xiaohua, immediately locking onto him. Xiaohua's thoughts were interrupted and he unconsciously frowned. He didn't move and just stood there quietly. When the flying boat got closer, Xiaohua could clearly see that there was an old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion standing at the bow of the boat. He was wearing a brocade robe and had an indifferent expression. When he saw Xiaohua, he actually smiled and nodded at him. The old man seemed to have a secret technique to hide his cultivation. Xiaohua looked at him and could only see that he was around the mid-nascent soul stage. As for the specific situation, Xiaohua didn't plan on using a secret technique to find out. Taoist Master Xiao. A slightly surprised voice came from the boat and a female cultivator flew out. It was Fairy Jing, who Xiaohua had seen before. Oh, so it's Fairy Jing's old acquaintance. That's good. Behind the old man, a young cultivator released his divine sense to lock onto Xiaohua. When he saw Fairy Jing fly down, he relaxed and withdrew his divine sense. Xiaohua saw Fairy Jing fly over and rubbed his chin. He looked at the boat and seemed to understand something. Sure enough, Fairy Jing landed and bowed. Greetings, Taoist Master Xiao. No need to be polite. Xiaohua waved his hand and smiled. What's the matter with this boat? Taoist Master, the senior on the boat is the famous senior Zhang Daoran of Jing Province. Fairy Jing said with a smile. After I parted ways with Taoist Master, I entered the star formation and immediately fell into a frenzied battle. My cultivation was limited, and I could only protect myself in the chaotic battle. Just as my Taoist cultivators were about to die in the battle, Senior Dao Ran appeared on his flying boat and stopped everyone in time. Senior Dao Ran invited us to enter the star formation. With our strengths as Taoist, we can go to the end of the star formation. Oh! Taoist Masters Taoist Zhang with Taoist Masters with Taoist? Taoist Masters Taoist with Daeron's Master with Taoist Taoist with Taoist. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and asked, Fellow Taoist Jing, have you been ambushed by Confucian cultivators in this star formation? Fairy Jing nodded. I personally saw more than 10 Golden Core disciples fall in the formation. Yes. Xiaohua nodded. This Zhang Daoran wouldn't be the same as Taoist Huada, a sanctimonious person, right? Even if Taoist has never seen Senior Dao Ran, could it be that you have never heard of his name? Fairy Jing was even more stunned than Xiaohua. Xiao Hua was quick to reply. He, spiritual master must be joking with me. How could any Taoist cultivator of the hidden immortal continent not know Senior Dao Ran? Fairy Jing covered her mouth and smiled. Her eyes were like ripples of water. All right. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. This old man admits that he has heard of it, but this old man's impression of it isn't very deep. Of course, Taoist is a senior with a similar cultivation level as Senior Dao Ran. Taoist is so low-key, even more so than Senior Dao Ran. Naturally, you wouldn't pay attention to Senior Dao Ran's deeds. Fairy Jing smiled and said, but this old man can guarantee that there are 50 people on the giant ship, including some Golden Core disciples. If they don't believe in Senior Dao Ran, how can they get on the flying ship? Li Jing, the nascent soul cultivator who withdrew his divine sense, became impatient and said loudly, if this fellow Taoist doesn't want to, then don't let him come up. There are many people who want to get on the flying ship. Fellow Taoist, this old man is Zhang Daoran of Jing Province. The old man also smiled and cupped his hands. The cultivator was surprised to see Zhang Daoran salute to Xiao Hua. After all, Xiao Hua was only at the early or middle nascent soul stage. He couldn't be considered a powerful figure on the flying ship. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. He also cupped his hands and said, this one is Xiao Hua of Yu Province. Oh, so it's Taoist Xiao. Zhang Daoran smiled and said, although this old man hasn't heard of Taoist Zhao's name before, it's fate that brought us together to participate in the Jadestage gathering. Today, we've all encountered a rare change in the Jadestage gathering. If we don't work together, I'm afraid we'll all die on the Jadestage mountain. Although this old man can't see through fellow Taoist's true cultivation level, it's needless to say that fellow Taoist's cultivation level is profound. Now that we're in a crisis, would fellow Taoist please get on the flying ship and lend this old man a hand? On the giant ship, the cultivators were in an uproar. What kind of cultivation level could be praised by Zhang Daoran? Although Xiao Hua looked ordinary, he couldn't be underestimated. Fairy Jing's face showed a trace of pride, as if she was also praised by Zhang Daoran. Brother Daoran's words make sense. We haven't even seen the treasure yet, so how can there be internal strife? Oh! Zhang Daoran looked at esteemed Sun Kong with a smile that wasn't a smile, then looked at Xiao Hua, who was next to Fairy Jing. Of course, he understood that esteemed Sun Kong had already seen through Xiao Hua's extraordinariness and thought that Xiao Hua had made an alliance with him. However, he didn't point it out and said, in that case, Brother Sun Kong, this old man will introduce you to Taoist Master Xiao Hua of the Yu Province. Xiao Hua. Esteemed Sun Kong frowned and his eyes turned slightly. He seemed to be in a meeting, but after a short moment he gave up. This name was indeed unfamiliar. He had never heard of it. Taoist Master Zhao's name is also unfamiliar to this old man. Esteemed Sun Kong asked bluntly, may I know which country Taoist Master cultivates in? When Zhang Daoran heard esteemed Sun Kong's address of Xiao Hua, he couldn't help but smile. Esteemed Sun Kong calling Xiao Hua Taoist Master meant that he treated Xiao Hua as an equal. This was truly rare for the usually unruly esteemed Sun Kong. Chapter 36-34. I've been cultivating in the Black Wind Mountain Range. So far, I've never been in charge of a country. Xiao Hua saw that Master Sun Kong's attitude towards him could be considered amiable, so he replied with a smile, the purpose of coming to the Jade Pavilion meeting this time is to get the Imperial Preceptor's lot. Oh, Master Sun Kong immediately let out a sigh of relief, but he still didn't let down his guard. He asked curiously, fellow Taoist, with your cultivation, you've never been in charge of a country? I can't believe it. Is it strange? Xiao Hua asked back, why can't you believe it? It's not strange, not strange. Zhang Daoran didn't know Xiao Hua's character, and he didn't want Xiao Hua to have friction with Master Sun Kong, so he hurriedly said, Taoist Zhao's luck is exceptional and your aptitude is outstanding. You can naturally cultivate to such a level without being in charge of a country. Xiao Hua, are you helping Zhang Daoran, or are you helping me? At this point, How could Master Sun Kong not see that Xiao Hua had nothing to do with Zhang Daoran, so he immediately said straightforwardly. Xiao Hua actually liked this kind of straightforward character, so he didn't hide it and said, I've already achieved my purpose of coming here. I don't have any desire for those 3 treasures. Brothers, perhaps your lifespans are coming to an end, and you need treasures to extend your lives, but I'm still young, so I don't need them for the time being. So I won't fight with you. Of course, we're all Taoist disciples. Although we're not from the same sect, in this Jade Pavilion meeting, we don't necessarily have to fight. It's best if we can resolve this without killing each other. This way, we won't let Star Lord Palace see us as a joke. Hee Taoist Xiao said it so easily. Don't tell me you didn't act ruthlessly when you got the Imperial Preceptor's lot. Master Sun Kong sneered disapprovingly. Xiao Hua nodded and said with a smile, Indeed, I killed several Taoist disciples who wanted to plot against me, and I also killed many immortal soldiers and generals. Saying this, Xiao Hua looked at Fairy Jing and said, When I killed the Taoist disciples, this Fairy Jing was also beside me. Fairy Jing's face was filled with fear. After all, Master Sun Kong was infamous. However, she still took half a step forward and said with a smile, Junior and Taoist Xiao didn't know each other before. We just met. Fairy Jing then explained the previous situation and said, if Taoist Master Xiao wasn't open and above board, he would have killed 2 Taoist cultivators in front of me. How would I dare to invite him again? Well done, you killed to your heart's content. Sun Kong clapped his hands and said, I like daring men like you. Damn it, do you have any yellow paper chicken blood? I'll be your sworn brother. Burning yellow paper to cut chicken blood? Xiao Hua was dumbfounded. These words were from his distant memories. After he started cultivating, other than that Qian Di Heng, no one else had this kind of spirit. Even in the hidden immortal continent, he had never heard of such an ancient tradition. Hearing this, Zhang Daoran rolled his eyes and said with a smile, We're not in a hurry to be sworn brothers. Now, we still need to temporarily establish an offensive and defensive alliance. This time's Jade Pavilion gathering is different from the past. We'll meet in life and death. Although we want to get the treasure, we can't let the Taoist disciples die. Before Zhang Daoran could finish speaking, a loud whistling sound came from above everyone's head. Everyone raised their heads and saw a meteor-like brilliance streaking across the sky, rushing towards the ribbon-shaped area beside the huge sphere. Boom! With a loud bang, a big hole was blasted open in the ribbon-shaped object. The brilliance also stopped in the midst of the fire, and inside it was a jade box that was about a foot long. Quick, don't let others snatch it. On Zhang Daoran's huge boat, several people clamored. Immediately, 3 people couldn't hold back and flew toward the jade box in the distance. Zhang Daoran's face immediately became embarrassed. Just when Zhang Daoran was about to scold them, Sun Kong Shangren snorted coldly, and an inexplicable chill appeared in the air. Then, Sun Kong Shangren opened his mouth and spat out a small green whip. The whip grew with the wind. When Sun Kong Shangren caught it with one hand, the whip had already become 3 feet long. How dare you attack in front of this old man? You really deserve to die. Sun Kong Shangren sneered again and waved his hand. The whip rushed into the air and immediately turned into a long green dragon. A gust of wind that could cut people's faces flew toward the 3 nascent soul cultivators who flew out. Zhang Daoran saw the brilliance flashing around Sun Kong Shangren and knew that Sun Kong Shangren was angry. He hurriedly shouted, Brother Sun Kong, just teach them a lesson. Fu Jian. Exalted Master Sun Kong even sneered. As he spoke, his figure flew up with a bang, and with a flick of his Taoist robe, an azure-green brilliance suddenly appeared and transformed into 100 feet in size that grabbed towards the 5 cultivators out of thin air. Zhang Daoran's expression changed slightly when he saw Master Sun Kong become even more aggressive. His Taoist robe rippled, and it seemed like he was about to make a move. However, just at this moment, a faint voice echoed in his ears, Brother Deng, don't be anxious. Let's see how Brother Sun Kong deals with this. Zhang Daoran let out a cold snort and withdrew his magic power. What can this old ghost do? Sure enough, when the dragon whip fell, Two of the cultivators were shocked and used their magic treasures to block. However, when the whip fell, two shadows appeared and pounced on the two of them. There was a loud rumble and their magic treasures were knocked out. The two nascent soul cultivators trembled and their faces turned pale as they fell several dozen feet. The other cultivators saw this and hurriedly shouted, "Senior Down, save us!" At this moment, Sun Kong Shangren's hand fell and the cultivator hurriedly used his magic treasure to resist. Poof! Unfortunately, his magic treasure couldn't withstand Sun Kong Shangren's hand and was crushed. When the hand exploded, the cultivator was also heavily injured and stopped in the air. Zhang Daoran heard the cultivator's cry for help and hurriedly shouted, "Master, please forgive us." With that, Zhang Daoran glanced at Xiaohua. If it wasn't for Xiaohua, he would have already attacked. He was quite apprehensive of Xiaohua. Xiaohua smiled. After all, he didn't care too much about his face. Although these three cultivators were on Zhang Daoran's boat, they didn't wait for Zhang Daoran's order to snatch the jade box. They clearly didn't put Zhang Daoran's order in their eyes. At this moment, Sun Kong Shangren was teaching the three of them a lesson. Although it somewhat brushed away Zhang Daoran's face, Xiaohua felt that Sun Kong Shangren did the right thing. However, things still went beyond Xiaohua's expectations. After Master Sun Kong killed the three of them, he didn't stop. A ruthless expression appeared on his face, and then he made a grabbing motion. The green whip landed in his hand, and then his body emitted a brilliant light as he waved the green whip. This time, Xiaohua was also dumbfounded and hurriedly shouted, "Master Sun Kong Shangren, please have mercy." Unfortunately, just as he said that, the three whip shadows were even more ferocious than the immortal slaying whip before it condensed its spirit. They turned into almost solid flying dragons and rushed into the three cultivators' chests. Their protective magic treasures flickered with a dazzling brilliance and were annihilated in the blink of an eye. Three miserable screams resounded. Three nascent souls less than 2 feet long flashed above the three cultivators' heads. Extreme hatred flashed in the eyes of those nascent souls. Boom! Just as the nascent souls were born, strands of purple awe-inspiring chi appeared within a few feet of the void. This awe-inspiring chi transformed into plum blossoms and carried the three nascent souls into space and disappeared. Following the disappearance of the three nascent souls, the scene was silent for a moment. No one dared to say a word. Xiaohua looked at Zhang Daoran's unsightly face and smiled bitterly. He finally understood the meaning of Zhang Daoran's previous words. When Master Sun Kong Shangren made a move, sure enough, nothing good would come out of it. "You actually dared to snatch things in front of me, you're really tired of living." Master Sun Kong's figure descended and he was still cursing, completely ignoring Zhang Daoran and Xiaohua's unsightly expressions. "Sun Kong," Zhang Daoran said coldly, "you killed the people on my ship, what's the meaning of this? Even if they were in the wrong, under my protection, you shouldn't have made a move, right?" "Old man Dang, Your Excellency," Master Sun Kong disapproved. "They didn't put you in their eyes at all. You're just a good guy who's stupid. If you're not convinced, Brother Daoran." Xiaohua saw that the two people were starting to get angry, and the corners of his mouth curled up. "This Xiao will also offend you." "Oh!" Zhang Daoran was stunned and looked at Xiaohua with some confusion. Xiaohua patted the top of his head, and a golden hand that was dozens of feet in size rushed out, grabbing towards Zhang Daoran's giant ship. The texture on this hand was clear, and there were runes flowing on it. It was no different from a real hand. Hee. Master Sun Kong laughed, and there was praise in his eyes. Zhang Daoran bit his lips, seeming to have come to a realization. Those who don't listen to orders and snatch treasures without permission must die. Those who spoke bewitchingly and hid on the side to disturb the cooperation of the two brothers must be Confucian spies. They must die. Xiaohua said indifferently, and his hand covered the several people who had just spoken. A panicked voice hurriedly shouted, "Senior Daoran, we boarded your giant ship because of your prestige, but you still haven't spoken. What is the meaning of our trust? Who would dare to follow you in the future? Senior Daoran, save me, I didn't speak just now." Seeing Xiaohua's hand fall, The cultivator who didn't speak, although he was a little scared, he didn't panic. The 4 cultivators who spoke bewitchingly were panicked. Seeing that Zhang Daoren really didn't attack like before, they were already panicking and hurriedly wanted to use their life source magic treasures. But what made them even more frightened was that their life source magic treasures, which were originally easy to use, were actually somewhat unable to move under Xiaohua's hand. Just as they were about to cast another spell, they saw a flash of golden light. The 4 of them felt a chill on their necks at almost the same time, followed by a huge pain. Pooh! Blood spurted out and 4 weak nascent souls rushed out from the bloodlight, each holding a small magic treasure in their hands. Chapter 36-35. Boom! Similarly, under everyone's watchful eyes, 4 waves of overwhelming qi surged, and dozens of plum blossoms enveloped the 4 nascent souls, disappearing in an instant. Everyone was stupefied, even more shocked than when they saw Sun Kong kill the 3 nascent soul cultivators. Although they were only early nascent soul cultivators, but they were still nascent soul cultivators. They were all 4th stage essence force like Xiaohua. The 4 nascent soul cultivators were slapped down by Xiaohua's palm, followed by a snap of scissors. In particular, everyone's hearts tightened. Although Sun Kong also killed the 3 nascent soul cultivators with a raise of his hand, he first used a magic treasure to injure 2, then used his large hand to slap them to death. What Sun Kong relied on was the sharpness of his life-bound magic treasure. But Xiaohua was different. Although he used a magic treasure to kill the 4 nascent soul cultivators, it was the large hand that was truly controlling the 4 nascent soul cultivators. In other words, Xiaohua could imprison the 4 early nascent soul cultivators with his magic power alone. As for whether it was a magic tool or magic treasure that killed them, it was already insignificant. Sun Kong's eyes flashed with extraordinary splendor. He stretched out his hand and slapped Xiaohua's shoulder, shouting, "As expected, you're a straightforward person. Damn it, you must chop off a chicken's head and burn yellow paper." Xiaohua calmly shifted his body, dodging Sun Kong's large hand, and said with a smile, "Must brothers become sworn brothers? Must we dual cultivate if it's true love?" Ah? Sun Kong Shangren stares blankly on the spot, and his hand that swatted the air also stops in midair. After a full moment, Sun Kong Shangren laughs loudly, and uses his finger to point at Xiaohua as he says, "What you said is too wonderful. Damn it, why didn't I know you 2,000 years earlier? Just based on your, must we dual cultivate if it's true love? I'll definitely become sworn brothers with you." Fairy Jing's face blushed as she stared at Xiaohua with her watery eyes. Even Zhang Daoran, who was originally angry, revealed a strange smile when he heard Xiaohua's last sentence. He couldn't vent his anger at Xiaohua and Master Sun Kong's brushing of his face. Boom, boom, boom. Right at this moment, there was another change in the defensive array. In the void in all directions, blood-red clouds surged, and a dozen more jade boxes flew out from the clouds, either crashing into the huge sphere or the belt around the sphere. But at this moment, no one dared to speak rashly, and no one dared to be the first to make a move. All of them moved their gazes away from the brilliance of the jade box to look at Zhang Daoran and Lord Sun Kong. Old Zhang, look, if it weren't for Taoist Master Xiao, you and I would be fighting happily now. I'm afraid that many cultivators would have died in these jade boxes." Sun Kong looked at Zhang Daoran proudly. "Now, do you understand?" The corner of Zhang Daoran's mouth twitched slightly. The effect of killing people was immediate. He knew very well that he couldn't get angry even if he wanted to. "Brother Daoran, send a few cultivators to find the jade boxes. Brother Sun Kong, send a few people to another place." Xiaohua said indifferently, "Old Zhang, please." Although Sun Kong was arrogant, he could be considered reasonable at this moment. He raised his hand and said with a smile. Zhang Daoran naturally understood that this was to give him face. Although his expression didn't change, his heart was already shaken. He opened his mouth and called out a few names, then looked at Fairy Jing and said with a smile, "Li Jing, go too." "Yes," Junior obeys. Fairy Jing hurriedly nodded. She knew that the three of them had something to say, so she flew away. After Fairy Jing left, Zhang Daoren waved his hand and a barrier appeared. He looked around and said in a low voice, "Taoist Master Xiao, this old man has something to say to you. Brother Daoren, please speak." Seeing Zhang Daoren's seriousness, Xiao Hua hurriedly changed his expression and said in a low voice, "Although we've only just met, we're still Taoist disciples. There's nothing to hide." Zhang Daoren looked at the disapproving Sun Kong and said, "Actually, this old man has long wanted to say this to old Sun Kong, but unfortunately, I never had the chance. If you weren't here today, this old man probably wouldn't have mentioned it to him. You don't like to say it, but I don't like to hear it." Sure enough, as soon as Zhang Daoren finished speaking, Sun Kong immediately shouted. Xiao Hua smiled and waved his hand, saying, "Brother Sun Kong, don't be impatient. We've all cultivated for thousands of years. We should have a bit of patience, right?" If Brother Xiao wasn't here, this old man wouldn't even bother with this old man. Sun Kong coldly snorted and looked into the distance. There, cultivators were looking for the jade boxes that had fallen there. Xiao Hua rubbed his nose and smiled bitterly. Neither of the two late nascent soul stage cultivators were willing to submit to the other. In addition, one of them was very arrogant and the other was too lazy to pay attention to others. They seemed to be high and mighty, but it was really strenuous to talk. If he hadn't just revealed his strength, the two of them might not have listened to him. And he could be considered a buffer for the two of them. Zhang Daoren slightly hesitated and said, "Actually, this old man has cultivated to a bottleneck. I keep feeling that I'm just a little bit away from entering the leaving aperture realm." Sun Kong's ears were naturally erect. When he heard this, he almost jumped up and shouted in an incredulous voice, "Old Zhang, you're bragging. How could you cultivate to such a realm?" "Believe it or not." Zhang Daoren curled his lips. "This old man is talking to Brother Xiao." Sun Kong opened his mouth. If it was before, he would have already left. He didn't believe that Zhang Daoren could enter the leaving aperture realm before him. Brother Daoren means... Xiao Hua's eyes turned and he understood. He smiled and said, "You're not interested in the azure nether dragon saliva?" Zhang Daoren nodded. "You can say that. Because if I can't get this little bit of opportunity, even if this old man lives another 10,000 years, I might not be able to break through." "Damn it, old Zhang, you're too cunning. You were still saying that you wanted to snatch the azure nether dragon saliva." Sun Kong couldn't bear it anymore and shouted. Zhang Daoren rolled his eyes and said, "Can this old man tell you the truth? Besides, even if this old man can't get anything else, getting the azure nether dragon saliva is also pretty good, right? This old man understands. You want the cold ghost gallbladder. Only this kind of extreme item can match your ice profound physique and enter the leaving aperture realm." Sun Kong suddenly realized. Zhang Daoren didn't hide it and nodded, saying, "This old man indeed wants the cold ghost gallbladder. It's not that this old man didn't plan to tell you, but think about it. Did you give this old man a chance? That's because you're hiding it and don't dare to say it." Of course, Sun Kong wouldn't admit it. Brother Sun Kong wants the azure nether dragon saliva, right? Xiao Hua said to Sun Kong with a smile. Sun Kong nodded solemnly. "That's right. This old man doesn't have old Zhang's opportunity. I'm afraid that I'll have to use this to extend my life and then break through. This Xiao already has the state teacher's lot. In that case, the three of us don't have any conflicts of interest?" Xiao Hua now also knew Zhang Daoren's plan. Looking at the two, he said, "Brother Daoren means that the three of us should join forces?" "That's right." Zhang Daoren nodded. "This old man doesn't dare to join forces with old ghost Sun Kong. This guy has too many tricks. If we're not careful, we'll suffer. Although this old man isn't familiar with Taoist cultivation is deep and can be considered to have the qualifications to join forces with this old man. Moreover, this old man is very familiar with Li Jing. She's a cautious person and keeps herself clean. She never interacts with ordinary cultivators. Since she can take the initiative to find Taoist, then this old man can barely trust Taoist character." Damn, this old man and Xiao Hua hit it off at first sight. After we go out, I'll definitely chop off a chicken's head and burn yellow paper. Sun Kong was much more straightforward than Zhang Daoren. Xiao Hua pondered for a moment and shook his head slightly. This Xiao understands what you two brothers mean, but this Xiao doesn't plan on joining forces with you two brothers? Damn, who do you think you are? Sun Kong was immediately enraged. He sneered, this old man thinks highly of you, old man Sun Kong. Zhang Daoren shouted sternly, it's not too late to listen to Brother Zhao's intentions first. Didn't you hit it off at first sight with him? Sun Kong looked a bit unhappy. Hee, it's not that I'm looking down on you two brothers. Xiao Hua actually admired Sun Kong's straightforwardness. He said with a smile, it's just that this Xiao was lucky enough to kill a 5th-level lower-rank Confucian general in a defensive formation. If nothing unexpected happened, it should be one of Star-Lord Hall's guardian Star-Lords. How could Star-Lord Hall leave this Xiao at that? This Xiao has been pondering on how to escape Star-Lord Hall's pursuit, but I couldn't find a good way. If this Xiao joins forces with you two brothers, wouldn't it be harming you two brothers? Ah? Zhang Daoren and Sun Kong were both dumbfounded. They looked at each other, shock and doubt flashing in their eyes. What Xiao Hua said was true. He had also thought of disguising himself, but even if he did, his spells and abilities would not change. It would still be impossible to escape Star-Lord Hall's pursuit. Rather than that, he might as well not expose his ability to disguise himself. Of course, he also wanted to disguise himself as a Confucian cultivator, but the time was not right. Appearing in this defensive formation filled with Taoism cultivators, wasn't that courting death? Brother Xiao, are you sure that Star-Lord has fallen? Zhang Daoren opened his mouth and asked softly. Of course, his primordial spirit was obliterated by this Xiao. His body was also burned by this Xiao's true samadhi fire. Xiao Hua said without hesitation. Very good. Sun Kong also hurriedly said, now that Yao Mountain is in chaos, others might not know that you killed that Star-Lord. Forget it, damn it, even if they know, this old man will still stand with you. To be able to kill a Star-Lord, this old man is truly impressed. This old man will definitely cut off a chicken's head and burn yellow paper with you. Zhang Daoren thought for a moment, then nodded and said, since Brother Xiao cannot hide this matter and tell us frankly, then you don't treat us as outsiders. You can kill a Star-Lord, so why can't we help you? If you didn't say this old man might not join forces with you. Now that this old man knows, how can I not join forces with you? Chapter 36-36. Damn it, Zhang Dun, when did you become so hot-blooded? How come I've never seen you act so impulsively? Sun Kong also grinned. Actually, Zhang Daoren continued, this is related to the second thing I want to tell you two brothers. Brother Daoren, please speak. Xiao Hua's heart moved, and he said indifferently. The second thing is related to the abnormality of the Jade Pavilion gathering. Zhang Daoren said tirelessly, I don't know if you two brothers have noticed that the Jade Pavilion gathering this time is completely different from before? To tell you the truth, I have participated in the Yaotai gatherings several times. In the past, the Yaotai gatherings were not so much a test for Taoist cultivators in the middle and late stages of Yuanying realm like me, but rather a different kind of auction. However, the usual auction was about primordial stones, but this auction is about strength. As long as you have the strength, you can get rare treasures and spiritual herbs from the Star-Lord Hall, and you don't necessarily have to pay the price of your life. That kind of risk is only for golden core and early nascent soul stage cultivators. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many nascent soul stage cultivators coming to join in the fun. That's right. Hearing Zhang Daoren's words, Sun Kong nodded in agreement. Speaking of the Jade Pavilion gathering, who doesn't know that it's the bait of the Star-Lord Hall? Every 10 years, they'll get some good things for us Taoist disciples to fight over. Come here and kill each other? However, how can there be no fighting over rare treasures? Outside the Jade Mountain is killing, inside the Jade Mountain is also killing. Rather than fighting over rare treasures outside the Jade Mountain, it's better to fight in the Jade Pavilion gathering. Of course, the most important thing is still the Imperial Preceptor's lot. which can only be used once. When we Taoist cultivators establish a country, the imperial preceptor's lot will reveal the country's title, and the imperial preceptor's lot can no longer be used. The most damaging move of the Star-Lord Hall is that the imperial preceptor's lot with the title of the country is useless to Taoist cultivators, while Confucian cultivators can use the imperial preceptor's lot to come to the Jade Mountain to exchange for rich rewards. Aren't you just toying with us Tao sect cultivators? Xiao Hua sneered. Yeah, even if that's the case, didn't Brother Xiao also come? Zhang Daoren said self-mockingly. Moreover, this old man and Master Sun Kong also came. Hundreds of fellow nascent soul cultivators have also arrived. In the past, the Yao Tai meeting emphasized balance. Our Taoist cultivators suffered some losses, but they were all in the formation and defense formation. The immortal soldiers and immortal generals of Star-Lord Hall might not take action, and they would also give a lot of elixirs and treasures. Sun Kong narrowed his eyes and said, but it's obviously different this time. According to all the signs, this Jade Pavilion meeting, I'm afraid that Star-Lord Palace has set up a great bait to kill most of the nascent soul stage cultivators. Zhang Daren's eyes were fierce as well. He said, since Star-Lord Hall wants me dead, why don't I fight to the death? If Brother Xiao can kill a Star Venerate, why can't I? That's true. You've already cultivated to the out-of-body stage, so you've reached the limit of Confucian cultivators' tolerance. If you can kill a Star Venerate here, you'll definitely leave your name as a hidden immortal. Sun Kong said thoughtfully. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, I originally thought that I was the only one who saw it, but I didn't expect the two of you to also see it. Since it's like this, we can't let these Taoist cultivators kill each other. Instead, we should unite our spearheads against the outside, so as to find a way to survive for most of the cultivators. As for the matter of joining hands, this Xiao naturally agrees, but it's only limited to fighting for treasures. This Xiao is willing to lend you two a hand. If you encounter Star-Lord Palace's pursuit, this Xiao feels that the two of you should look at your own strength. The two of you absolutely can't do something like hitting a rock with an egg. Moreover, this Xiao is confident that under the pursuit of a Star Lord, there's a chance. Xiao Hua's words were very clear. He didn't believe in the two's strength. After all, they were only late nascent soul stage cultivators, and it was difficult for them to compare to Star Lords of the lower 5th grade. Rather than sending them to their deaths, it was better to escape on their own. He believed that his Leaping Thunder Realm's Leaping Thunder escape technique would be able to escape a way out. How can that be? Sun Kong was about to shout again, but Zhang Daoren said in a low voice, Old Brother Sun Kong, listen to Old Brother Xiao. Even if we ambush and kill some immortal soldiers and immortal generals, it's also helping Old Brother Xiao. If we command a group of Taoism disciples to fight against Star-Lord Palace's disciples, isn't that also helping Old Brother Xiao? Alright. Sun Kong muttered a little, nodding slightly as a form of agreement. Xiao Hua was overjoyed. He cupped his hands and said, to be able to meet the two of you, this Xiao is truly fortunate. Actually, the so-called sworn brothers and sworn brothers are all nonsense. It's like having someone in your heart, but that person isn't your dual cultivation partner. It's unnecessary to take off your pants and fart. You and I both know in our hearts that it's enough to help each other. Well said. Sun Kong liked Xiao Hua talking about dual cultivation partners the most. He couldn't help but clap his hands and laugh. Zhang Daoren also smiled slightly. If we become sworn brothers, there must be a blood oath. It seems more reliable. We're just saying this, there aren't any restrictions. There's no need for any restrictions. The Tao of Heaven and the Tao Heart are restrictions. My own heart is also a restriction. Xiao Hua disagreed. If there's a rebellion in the heart, even if it's a blood oath, what can it do? If you don't plan to rebel, what's wrong with not making a blood oath? Trust. Zhang Daoren gave a thumbs up. Trust without doubt, this is what brothers are like. I hope Taoism disciples are all brothers. Xiao Hua said with a smile. I can't chop off a chicken's head and burn yellow paper. I always feel like something is missing. Sun Kong was very regretful. He raised his hands and said, "How about we give each other a high five?" Alright. Zhang Daoran raised his hands and looked at Xiaohua. Xiaohua was a little hesitant. It was very normal for Zhang Daoran and Sun Kong to team up. After all, although the two didn't get along, they were also familiar with each other. He had only met the two for the first time. They hadn't reached that kind of friendship yet. However, Xiaohua looked at the dozens of cultivators on the two flying boats standing there very obediently. They weren't like the group of cultivators led by Taoist Huada. Xiaohua's heart moved. He raised his hands and said, "I'm really lucky to be able to make friends with two late nascent soul stage brothers." Ah! Sun Kong high-fived Zhang Daoran with one hand and Xiaohua with the other. He laughed loudly and said, "Even in my dreams, I didn't expect to be able to high-five old man Zhang. This time's Jade Pavilion meeting is really interesting." The three of them high-fived the alliance agreement. They were all very happy. Zhang Daoran removed the barrier and looked around. He said, "After we get the jade boxes, we'll first take out the items in the jade boxes. Whoever wants them, take out the corresponding item as the price. After these jade boxes are traded, we'll send a group of cultivators to explore the various parts of the Imperial Formation." Alright. Sun Kong nodded. This old man has a magic treasure here that can detect the flaws in the Imperial Formation. After we find the jade boxes, we'll immediately leave the Imperial Formation. Sun Kong then pointed at the blood-colored star at the end of the starry sky. Perhaps one of the three treasures is on that blood-colored star. "All right, we'll do as you say." Xiaohua nodded. "If you need me to do anything, just say it." Soon after, the three of them discussed a bit. The dozen or so cultivators who were looking for the jade boxes had returned. Sure enough, each of them had a jade box in their hands. The jade boxes were all closed, so they didn't know what was inside. The cultivators holding the jade boxes didn't dare to open them. They walked in front of Zhang Daoran and Sun Kong and respectfully handed the jade boxes to them. Sun Kong waved his hand and said, "You all take them first." Xiaohua saw that Sun Kong didn't care and shook his head. He smiled and said, "Brother Sun Kong, these are all hot potatoes. If these cultivators take them, I'm afraid there will be problems. It's more suitable for you to take them." Sun Kong disdainfully replied, "We're going to trade in a bit. Who has the patience to take these things?" Xiaohua thought for a moment and said to Zhang Daoran, "Brother Daoran, I don't think it's appropriate for us to trade here." Zhang Daoran took the jade boxes from the cultivators and checked them one by one. He wanted to quickly distribute the jade boxes to appease everyone, so he was startled by Xiaohua's words. Xiaohua smiled. "It's actually very simple. It's just that Brother Daoran didn't think too much about it." This old man understands." Xiaohua didn't say it out loud. He only gave a slight hint, and Zhang Daoran and Sun Kong already knew. The two of them looked at each other and controlled their flying boats to get closer. Fairy Jing gave the jade boxes to Zhang Daoran and then stood next to Xiaohua. She smiled and said, "Taoist, can you follow me onto the flying boat now?" "Of course. Fairy Jing, please." Xiaohua replied with a smile. Fairy Jing had a sweet appearance and her eyes were even more beautiful. The two of them flew onto the boat. At this moment, they heard Zhang Daoran say, "Fellow Taoists, you've all seen it. Previously, we fought against each other and lost countless disciples. We might not have been able to obtain any treasures. Now we've worked together and obtained all the treasures in this formation without fear of death. I don't need to say more about who is safe and who is in danger, right?" "Yes, Senior is right. Junior will follow Senior's arrangements." Immediately, a cultivator nearby said, "Junior is only at the Golden Core realm. I wouldn't dare to compare myself to Seniors. If there is something Junior needs, Junior will wait until Seniors don't want it and Junior will pick it up. It's better than dying here." When this cultivator spoke, everyone laughed. They all understood, but no one dared to hold back after seeing the treasures. At this moment, Zhang Daoran, Sun Kong, and Xiaohua being able to stand out was exactly what they wanted to see. Sun Kong also shouted from the side, "Brother Daoran's words are what this old man wants to say. If you don't have any objections, then listen to Brother Daoran's explanation." "Yes, Junior has no objections. Sun Kong's methods were ruthless, and everyone on his flying boat was even more united. No one said anything. Chapter 36-37. Although Zhang Daoran disdained Master Sun Kong's character, at the same time, he was envious of Master Sun Kong's methods. With his character, he wasn't suited for any ruthless actions. After hearing Master Sun Kong's words, he said, "Previously, I discussed with Master Sun Kong and Taoist Master Xiao, and we decided to divide the treasures within the defensive formation. Whoever obtained them would have to pay a price, and perhaps others would also need it. This way, everyone would benefit. In the end, there would always be some things left in my hands, so I'll take them and take out some things that you fellow Taoists need, such as spirit pills or magic treasures. However, I've been warned by Taoist Master that this defensive formation is very dangerous. If we divide it now, if any fellow Taoist is unable to protect himself or perishes here, wouldn't our hard work be in vain? Therefore, my intention with Master Sun Kong and Taoist Master is that when we leave Mount Yaotai and arrive at Taoist Master Zhao's Black Wind Mountain, Master Sun Kong's Black Wind Mountain, or even my Grand Wind Mountain, it won't be too late for us to trade then." "Alright, it's settled then. Let's go to Taoist Master Sun Kong's Black Wind Mountain." Xiao Hua hastily waved his hand. "Let's go to Brother Daren's Grand Wind Mountain. My place is currently in a state of war. Fellow Taoists, if you go there, you'll attract the attention of Confucian cultivators, which isn't good for everyone." "Alright, then let's set it at my Grand Wind Mountain." Zhang Daoran nodded. At that time, Master Sun Kong, and the three of us will preside over it. We definitely won't disappoint you fellow Taoists. Since the three cultivators with the highest cultivation bases had already decided, the others could only listen to them. Besides, what Zhang Daoran said was the truth. Even if they could obtain the rare treasure they wanted here, if they could not leave Yaotai Mountain alive, wouldn't everything be for naught? Junior will listen to the arrangements of the two seniors. Fairy Jing was the first to speak. Xiao Hua's heart stirred, and he tilted his head to look at Fairy Jing. Fairy Jing seemed to have her thoughts seen through by Xiao Hua, and she hastily lowered her head, her forehead actually somewhat red. Since Fairy Jing had spoken, the others agreed. The cultivators on Sun Kong Shangren's flying boat also handed their jade boxes to Sun Kong Shangren for safekeeping. "Alright, the plan now is..." Zhang Daoran saw that this matter was over and was about to speak when the entire imperial formation shook. Dozens of pillars of vast qi rushed out from the huge sphere. Layers of clouds shot out from the pillars of vast qi and quickly scattered in all directions. Then, more strange ripples appeared from various parts of the formation. Wherever the ripples went, the entire formation seemed to boil. Bubbles surged out, and the bubbles grew from small to large. In the end, they exploded with pops. Furthermore, the belt of boulders that surrounded the star was now torn apart by the vibrations, turning into thousands of huge meteors that shot towards the entire defensive formation with a rumbling sound. Destruction of heaven and earth. Boulders flew everywhere, almost covering the entire defensive formation. Xiao Hua was immediately alarmed. Thinking of what happened in the previous defensive formation, he hastily shouted, "Brothers, let's hurry and join hands. These boulders are a big movement of the defensive formation. I'm afraid they want to kill us here." "Alright," Zhang Daoran proudly said, "with the three of us here, what is there to fear? This old man will join hands with you to resist. Brother Sun Kong, hurry and use your secret technique to find a way out of this defensive formation." "Alright." Sun Kong was also in high spirits. He shouted, "This old man hasn't joined hands with someone like this in a long time. Today, watch this old man's methods." As he spoke, the boulders had already begun to fall towards Xiao Hua and the others. Although they didn't have the terrifying destructive aura of the defensive formation from before, the whistling of the boulders, the strong wind blowing against their faces, and the huge momentum of their fall revealed another kind of terror. In particular, the boulders were still relatively slow at first, but after flying for a while, they gradually sped up. The group of cultivators scanned them with their divine senses, and after a little calculation, they immediately understood that when the boulders fell in front of them, their speed and strength were definitely not something a single cultivator could resist. For a moment, everyone's faces turned pale. Many cultivators released their divine senses, anxiously looking for a place to hide within the range of their divine senses. Unfortunately, the entire defensive formation was rippling everywhere, and those ripples were all the primers that attracted the boulders. The entire defensive formation was being baptized by the boulders, and there was no safe place at all. The only thing the Taoist cultivators could do was to use their divine abilities to resist these boulders. Fellow Taoists. At this moment, Zhang Daoran was surprisingly calm. He shouted, "Activate your Dharma treasures and form an array behind me. 10 mid-tier 4th grade Essence Chi cultivators will be at the front, 5 mid-tier or low-tier 4th grade Essence Chi cultivators will be at the back, and so on. Golden Core cultivators will stand at the back." Yes. The cultivators on Zhang Daoran's flying ship hurriedly flew down. Sun Kong also shouted, "Quick, this old man is going to withdraw the flying ship. You all stand behind fellow Taoist Zhang." With that, Sun Kong waved his Taoist robe, and the flying ship let out a rumble and gradually shrunk. All the cultivators on the ship didn't dare to be negligent and flew down one after another. The two groups of cultivators that had been fighting before began to work together before the great disaster. Sun Kong withdrew the flying ship and took out a palm-sized macaque from his Jianquan pouch. The macaque stood still in the air, stretched out its arms, and lazily opened its eyes. However, when the macaque saw the flying boulders clearly, it cried out, "Gigi," and hastily shrank its head. It used its hands to hide its head and jumped into Sun Kong's hands as if it was extremely scared. Damn it! Sun Kong was somewhat embarrassed. He grabbed the macaque's hands and angrily said, "Hurry up and find a way for this old man, or this old man won't give you anything to eat." Gigi. The macaque was very aggrieved. It smacked its lips and stretched out its hands to pull at Sun Kong's Taoist robe. This is Sun Kong's demon pet. Its name is Changgung, and it's a variant macaque. Zhang Daoran smiled and said to Xiao Hua, who had already flown to his side, "This macaque has a pair of void-piercing eyes and can see the weakness of space. It'll be of great use within this defensive formation." Void-piercing eyes? Xiao Hua's eyes turned, and he said with a smile, "I've heard of a type of void-piercing beast whose eyes can see through the void. I didn't expect a macaque to have one as well." Zhang Daoran nodded. Brother Xiao is right. The void-piercing beast is a variant beast of the void. I've only heard of it and have never seen it. However, this macaque can't compare to the void-piercing beast. It can only find the weak points of space. As for the specifics, it'll depend on Sun Kong's methods. If the void-piercing beast is here, it'll probably be able to directly open it. As he spoke, Zhang Daoran looked at the black shadow pressing down from above in the distance and said in a low voice, "The boulders are about to arrive. Let's each use our own methods. You take the right and I take the left. We'll do as much as we can. The more you and I block, the more hope the Tao sect cultivators behind us have, and fewer people will die." As he spoke, Zhang Daoran's body flashed with brilliance. Heaven and earth origin chi poured into his head, setting off a storm. Within the storm, Zhang Daoran's body rapidly expanded, and in the end he was several dozen feet tall. Seeing Zhang Daoran again, he opened his mouth and a strange magic treasure flew out. This magic treasure was like a stick, but it was wide at the top and narrow at the bottom. The center of the magic treasure was connected to a fist-sized profound stone. Puff! Zhang Daoran spat out a mouthful of true essence on the magic treasure. The magic treasure let out a roar and rushed into the air. As Zhang Daoran's Dharma body waved its hands, the magic treasure flashed with a dazzling brilliance and slowly expanded. When it landed in Zhang Daoran's hands, it was already like two huge fists. Seeing Zhang Daoran activate his Dharma body, Sun Kong hurriedly took out a tricolored bead and threw it into Changgung's mouth. The macaque swallowed it in one gulp, and its body emitted the same color. Then it burped. Before Sun Kong could speak, its two pitch-black eyes emitted an even more dazzling tricolored brilliance. The brilliance that shot out from the macaque's eyes was a full 3 inches long. Then, the macaque jumped up from Sun Kong's hand, looked around, and flew behind everyone. Sun Kong glanced at Zhang Daoran with a trace of shock in his eyes. Then, he urged his body to follow behind the macaque. Boom, boom, boom. The boulder was approaching, shaking the entire defensive array. Xiaohua clearly felt that the space around him was trembling. In the face of such a strong impact, no fancy spells could work. Only absolute strength was truly useful. This experience was already known when he fell into the trial array of the Sunset Island. Moreover, how similar was this boulder array to the trial array at that time? It was just that this boulder seemed to be endless. It was a killing array. Roar! Xiaohua opened his mouth and roared. The golden light around his body shone brightly, and waves of heaven and earth essence qi rushed into his body. In the dazzling golden light, Xiaohua's Dharma body was quickly born. In a moment, it was already dozens of feet in size. It was not inferior to Zhang Daoran. Look at this Xiao's means! Xiaohua shouted again. With a wave of his hand, the wishful steel staff appeared. Grow, grow, grow. The huge staff turned into more than 100 feet in front of everyone's stunned eyes. The pitch-black staff was filled with blood and murderous intent. Obviously, no one knew how many people had died under the staff. Good. Zhang Daoran saw Xiaohua's Dharma body and the wishful steel staff in his hand. His eyes flashed with a strange color, and he couldn't help but cry out. Then, he said in high spirits, "Brother Xiao, you and I can make a bet. Let's see who can destroy more boulders. What do you think?" "As you wish." Xiaohua laughed. Woo! As he spoke, a huge boulder that was hundreds of meters in size had already landed on top of Zhang Daoran's head. The edge of the boulder emitted a strong light. Clearly, it was on fire due to the friction in the air. Shrill sounds were also emitted from the fire. The suffocating wind caused the brilliance around Zhang Daoran to sway left and right. Chapter 36-38. Hit. Zhang Daoran's face turned cold. The magic weapon in his left hand emitted a pale white brilliance and rushed to the air a few hundred feet away. Poof! The brilliance fell on the boulder, and the flames of the boulder were immediately annihilated. Then, a faint layer of frost quickly spread on the surface of the boulder. Then, with a kacha sound, the surface of the boulder began to crack. The crack gradually deepened, and when it fell about 100 feet in front of Zhang Daoran's head, Zhang Daoran waved his right hand, and a fist of more than 100 feet rushed out and hit the boulder. Boom! The 100-feet-sized boulder shattered into dozens of pieces, either brushing past Zhang Daoran's body and falling obliquely to the ground. Good. The nascent soul cultivators behind Zhang Daoran who were on guard shouted. Another 10 cultivators released their magic treasures. Lights of various colors rushed out and smashed the rocks in front of them. Ha, Brother Daoran is really powerful. Xiaohua smiled and gave a thumbs up. Since he entered Yaoda Mountain, he had never been so carefree. Although there were countless boulders in front of him and he didn't know where he could resist, it was still satisfying to fight with a cultivator like Zhang Daoran. It depends on Brother Zhao's means. Zhang Daoran narrowed his eyes. Just in front of Xiaohua's head, there was also a boulder of more than 100 feet falling. Xiaohua smiled and said, "This Xiao is not as good as Brother Daoran's means. I can only use stupid means. I'm afraid I'll make Brother Daoran laugh." With that, Xiaohua's body flashed with lightning, and his huge figure rushed up quickly. In the blink of an eye, he was under the boulder. Then Xiaohua's eyes widened, and he raised the staff with both hands and hit the boulder. Boom! With a loud bang, Xiaohua's huge figure tumbled backwards, and the boulder actually exploded under Xiaohua's wishful steel staff. The entire boulder turned into nearly 100 pieces, and it was more effective than Zhang Daoran's magic weapon. Seeing that only a few pieces of the boulder brushed past Xiaohua's body and fell to the cultivators behind him, Zhang Daoran couldn't help but praise again. Good divine power, good staff technique, good eyesight. Although Xiaohua's words were humble, his heart was proud. He crushed the boulder not only by relying on the strength of his physical body, but also by relying on his sharp eyes. The place where the wishful steel staff hit was exactly where the boulder could be crushed. Moreover, he borrowed the momentum to roll, and the vibration his body suffered was weakened. This method was much better than Zhang Daren's pure spiritual power. Zhang Daren naturally saw through it too and said with a bitter smile, "This old man was wrong. How could I make this kind of bet with you? That strike of yours didn't consume any magic power. Moreover, your eyes are like lightning. That strike of yours was aimed at the vital part of the boulder. It's as if you could kill a cultivator with a single strike. This old man, how can I compare to you?" "Huh, Brother Dao Ran, it's too late to regret now." Xiaohua laughed, and his whole body flashed with lightning again. He rushed forward again, and before the second boulder could get close, the wishful steel staff had already swung out. Rumble. Although this boulder was much bigger than the previous one, the pressure it exerted on Xiaohua didn't change at all. Xiaohua's body was shaken to the point that he was forced to retreat, but he managed to reduce the enormous force by 70%. As for the fragments that were shattered, it was a piece of cake for the dozen or so mid-nascent soul stage cultivators behind him. The earth-shattering rumbling sounds were incessant, and as time passed, the sounds became even more concentrated. Like a violent storm, huge rocks dragged flames behind them, shaking the sky as they howled towards Xiaohua and Zhang Daoren. In the first 2 hours, it was really hard to tell who was better. One was as quiet as a virgin, waving the magic weapon in his hand again and smashing the boulders with a punch. The other was moving like a rabbit, rushing into the sky from time to time, and smashing down with the wishful steel staff, regardless of size. However, after an hour, there was a slight difference. Zhang Daren's magic power was vast, but his body was not as good as Xiaohua's. Under the impact of dozens of boulders, his entire meridians were a little sore, not to mention the trembling of his body. Zhang Daren's divine sense swept out. The boulders passing through the sky also had an impact on his divine sense. His divine sense would be injured by more boulders if he released it more than 10 feet. Zhang Daoren did not dare to release it too far. He only took a rough look and could not help but secretly complain in his heart. The boulders on the side of the huge sphere seemed to be endless. The entire defensive formation was filled with boulders. Not to mention that there was no place to hide, there seemed to be no end to the boulders above his head. After Zhang Daoren knocked down a boulder that was dozens of feet in size, he patted it on the top of his head. A giant hand that was nearly 100 feet in size was born from the top of his head. With a huge roar, the giant hand held the sky with one palm and waved toward the top of his head. There was a gust of wind, and then there was the sound of boulders hitting each other. Within a range of nearly 100 feet, the giant hand swept away everything. "Who?" Zhang Daoren breathed a sigh of relief. Taking advantage of this gap, he hurriedly urged his cultivation method and took a little rest. Brother Daoren's magic power is really powerful, Xiaohua said with a smile. The wishful steel staff in his hand was still neither fast nor slow. It was like an old farmer plowing the field, breaking one boulder after another. Zhang Daoren looked at Xiaohua's vigorous figure and was quite envious. In his early years, he also had the heart to temper his body, but this kind of body cultivation method was really difficult to find. Occasionally, he would get the cultivation method of the demon spirit, but it was too overbearing. He was in human form and could not cultivate it. When he heard Xiaohua's words, the corner of his mouth slightly smiled. He did not answer and seized the time to adjust his breath. However, in a moment, a large number of small stones mixed with thick smoke and dust covered Zhang Daoren. Zhang Daoren sighed slightly in his heart and waved the magic weapon in his hand again. However, after this time, the gap between Zhang Daoren and Xiaohua was widened. Where Zhang Daoren urged his magic weapon, the boulder fragments became bigger and bigger. The dozen or so nascent soul middle stage cultivators behind him began to feel a huge pressure. From time to time, 1 or 2 cultivators would exchange positions with the cultivators behind them and temporarily rest. Under Xiaohua's wishful steel staff, all the boulders, regardless of size, had always been relatively uniform. Although the number was large, the fragments were small, so the dozen or so cultivators behind him did not have to expend much effort. Later, many cultivators even took the initiative to fly to Zhang Daren's side to help. Another 2 hours passed, but the flying stones of the entire defensive array still showed no signs of stopping. Old man Sun Kong. Zhang Daoran was a little impatient. He urged his magic power and shouted, "Did your Chang Gung find anything?" Sun Kong's slightly embarrassed voice immediately sounded, "The fluctuations of the boulders here are too great. The entire space is affected. Chang Gung has not found anything yet. Brother Dang, hold on a little longer." Zhang Daoran was helpless. After thinking for a moment, he stretched out his hand and took out a palm-sized semicircular magic weapon from his Qiankuan bag. He spat out a mouthful of true essence, and the magic weapon immediately shot out like a sharp arrow. It followed the extremely small gap between the boulders to a space of several hundred feet. Zhang Daoran chanted again, "Quick!" But with a flash of brilliance, the magic weapon suddenly expanded to several hundred feet. It was like a big umbrella that blocked above his head. Boom boom boom. 3 loud sounds rang out in a row. The brilliance on the magic weapon flashed rapidly, and the entire magic weapon fell with the boulders. "Rise." Zhang Daoran pointed his finger. Another surge of magic power rushed out, and the magic weapon rushed up 5 feet. Boom. Unfortunately, at this time, another boulder fell. With a crisp "kacha" sound, the magic weapon was damaged. Its brilliance disappeared, and the boulder fell again. Alas! Zhang Daoran only wanted to give it a try. Seeing that this method didn't work, he immediately abandoned the magic weapon and hurriedly wanted to activate the magic weapon in his hand. However, there were now 4 boulders piled up on top of the semicircular magic weapon. Zhang Daoran had just raised the magic weapon in his hand when he felt something was wrong. He activated his divine sense again, and the big hand appeared out of thin air. However, this time, the big hand seemed to be very strenuous. It could only sweep the space of several hundred feet and couldn't extend too far. Seeing this, Xiaohua knew that even though Zhang Daoran's magic power was profound, he was still unable to cope with these huge rocks that were constantly striking down like a heavenly tribulation. He pondered for a moment and called out, "Brother Dun, the formation of the many cultivators behind us has already become somewhat chaotic under the attack of the huge rock fragments. This Xiao's prestige is not enough to convince the masses. How about this Xiao help you take on some huge rocks first? Then you can restrain them." Zhang Daoran was stunned. He looked at Xiaohua with some disbelief and then looked at the endless boulders above his head. How could he not understand Xiaohua's meaning? This meant that he wanted him to rest. "All right." Zhang Daoran thought for a moment and nodded. "We'll wait for the 2 groups to cooperate. I'll rest for a moment, and then when Brother Xiao is exhausted, I'll take over." "All right, we'll do as Brother Daoran says." Xiaohua agreed and waved his hand. "Fellow Taoists, follow me to Senior Zhang's side. We'll hit him with our power." "Yes, Taoist Master Xiao." The cultivators behind Xiaohua were full of confidence. They indeed didn't use too much magic power. Zhang Daoran and Xiaohua slowly approached each other, and the 2 groups of cultivators also merged into one. Zhang Daoran withdrew from the sky and withdrew his avatar. He only felt a burst of bone softness and numbness, and a sharp pain that he hadn't felt for a long time came from his meridians. "Senior Daoran, it's all thanks to you and Taoist Master Xiao." Behind him, a burly nascent soul cultivator said with a smile. "Otherwise, facing such a vast rain of boulders, we would have already died without a burial ground. You should rest more. It's time for us to exert our strength. We'll have to rely on your magical ability later." "Then?" Zhang Daoran nodded lightly and took out a jade bottle from his bosom. He poured out a medicinal pill from the jade bottle and put it into his mouth. His figure swayed and landed behind the crowd. All the cultivators took the initiative to make way for him, and their eyes were full of respect. Looking at Xiaohua again, he was still the kind of person who didn't seek merit but only sought not to make mistakes. He waved the wishful staff unhurriedly, and the boulders shattered one by one, like a child in the secular world using a small stick to hit a hamster that popped out of a hole in the ground. Chapter 36-39. Zhang Daoran rested for another hour. Even though Xiao Hua's divine strength was astonishing, he still started to feel exhausted. This exhaustion wasn't just physical exhaustion, but also mental exhaustion. After all, who wouldn't slack off after constantly striking the boulders like this? What's more, in the past hour, it seemed like there were no more boulders that were 300 meters in size. The size of the boulders was gradually increasing, and the force of impact was more than twice as strong as before. Xiao Hua's arms were somewhat sore. When Zhang Daoran saw this, he said loudly, "Taoist Master Xiao, it's time for you to rest." "Alright." Xiao Hua heaved a sigh of relief and agreed. Zhang Daoran was just about to urge his magic treasure forward when he heard Sun Kong shout, "Old man Zhang, Taoist Master Xiao, I'm afraid you guys can't be replaced. My Chang'eng seems to have discovered some flaws in the defensive formation. However, the flaws aren't here. We need to go to another place in the rain of boulders. I'm searching with Chang'eng, and I'm simply unable to divert my attention to block the boulders. I'd like to ask someone to come over and protect me." "Taoist Master Xiao," Zhang Daoran said with a smile, "you can rest now." Xiao Hua retreated half a meter, thought for a moment, and said, "I should be able to hold on for about 2 hours. If Brother Sun Kong can find the exit within 2 hours, then Brother Daoran doesn't have to replace me." Sun Kong transmitted his voice from afar, "2 hours is enough." "Alright." Xiao Hua said to Zhang Daoran, "Brother Daoran, quickly go and protect Brother Sun Kong. The two of you are responsible for the safety of our lives. Don't be careless." "Alright." Zhang Daoran knew that he was far inferior to Xiao Hua in dealing with the boulders. He responded and urged the magic treasure in his hand. His figure flew in the direction of Sun Kong. Along the way, the boulders exploded under the brilliance of the magic treasure. Seeing that Zhang Daoran had left, Xiao Hua waved the wishful steel staff again. When he saw that the endless boulders were denser than raindrops, Xiao Hua also became excited. With a long roar, his waist swelled, and the wishful steel staff grew again. The wishful steel staff danced in Xiao Hua's hand like a wheel. Rumble! The continuous bombardment was particularly harsh in the vibration of space. Xiao Hua, who was 100 feet tall, was like a demon god. His entire upper body was covered by smoke and dust. Pieces of gravel fell on his body, but they could not hurt him. One by one, they were once again destroyed by the cultivators whose morale had also soared. "Watch this, Xiao." After another half an hour, there was still no news from Sun Kong Shangren. Xiao Hua yelled, his whole body flashed with golden light, and the huge Dharma idol slowly retracted. After returning to its original state, Xiao Hua put away the wishful steel staff, and then rushed towards the top of his head like the wind. "Taoist Xiao? What are you doing?" Xiao Hua's behavior was quite strange, causing the dozen or so Yuanying stage cultivators behind him who were also extremely tired to be stunned, and their faces changed slightly. This was because the boulders were not only powerful, but the boulders were also extremely dense. Not to mention that the distance between the boulders could not allow the cultivators to use the flying technique. Even the gaps between the boulders could not allow the cultivators to escape freely. As long as the cultivators made a slight mistake, they would immediately be hit by the boulders. This was also the fundamental reason why the dozens of cultivators could only resist here, and no one dared to escape. At this time, Xiao Hua actually wanted to rush into these boulders with his bare hands. How could everyone not be surprised? Even some narrow-minded people had begun to doubt Xiao Hua's motives. Everyone was still surprised. When Xiao Hua rushed to the front of the first boulder, his figure suddenly floated strangely to the side, and at the moment of imminent peril, he let go of the boulder. At the same time, in the blink of an eye, without waiting for him to stand firm, another boulder smashed down like a mountain. Ouch! Everyone was slightly speechless, but at this time, Xiao Hua's figure once again floated strangely, and in midair, he flew behind the previous boulder. Good! Everyone unconsciously cheered in their hearts. In the few breaths of time when everyone was cheering, Xiao Hua seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll, and more like a ghost, he rushed over several boulders all of a sudden. Not good. Taoist Master Xiao. Seeing the huge boulder completely smashing down, the dozen or so Yuanying stage cultivators in front of them were shocked. If it was the initial boulder, they still had the ability to join forces and break it, but now the boulder was really huge and had exceeded their ability. They all exclaimed in their hearts, could it be that he wants to escape? Of course, at this moment, Xiaohua had calmly flown up dozens of feet in the air, and he did not suffer any damage at all. Anyone who thought about it knew that Xiaohua had the magical ability to escape from this boulder rain. In that case, Xiaohua abandoned the wishful staff and flew behind the boulder. If he did not escape, then what was he doing? Just when the dozen or so Yuanying stage cultivators were about to grit their teeth and catch these boulders, Xiaohua's figure paused slightly, and he flew down with the boulder. When his speed was the same as the boulder, his mind was integrated into his spiritual sense, and the spiritual sense was like several big hands wrapped around the boulder below him. Then they heard Xiaohua roar, "Up!" Several boulders actually made a loud, boom boom sound in Xiaohua's spiritual sense, and then the side of the boulder suddenly tilted. The entire boulder was actually used by Xiaohua to borrow force, and under the control of his spiritual sense, it suddenly flew upside down and rushed to the boulder above Xiaohua's head. Boom! Several roars sounded again, and the flying boulder collided with the falling boulder, and each turned into fragments, scattering in all directions. Xiaohua looked at the surrounding gravel and soil mist, and his eyes narrowed into slits with a smile. Grandma, this spiritual sense secret technique is really powerful. Now, this Xiao's spiritual sense is not only abnormally strong, but it can also be used like the hands of a pure Yuanying stage cultivator. What's more, my spiritual sense is subtle, and it's easier to borrow force than physical strength. This way, this Xiao can not only break this rain of boulders and rest my body, but also use it to temper my spiritual sense and mind. It's really killing two birds with one stone. Xiaohua released his spiritual sense, and the group of Yuanying stage cultivators below him could naturally sense it. But when they saw how powerful Xiaohua's spiritual sense was, they didn't even have the heart to cry out in surprise, and could only stare blankly at Xiaohua alone, performing a one-man show. A one-man show facing the entire falling boulder array by himself. Yes, high up in the sky, Xiaohua was like a bullet, jumping from one place to another, and every time he found a gap, he would immediately release his spiritual sense. At first, his spiritual sense was the same as Zhang Daren's, constantly being attacked by these boulders, but after an hour, his spiritual sense began to condense into threads, as if it was solid, and the impact of the boulders had already decreased. Even when Xiaohua released his spiritual sense, the thousands of spiritual sense threads also wrapped around the boulders, and then Xiaohua's spiritual sense shook together, and the falling boulders immediately changed direction, suddenly flying backwards, crashing into other falling boulders. As they watched Xiaohua shatter the giant boulders one after another, no one would have thought that Xiaohua was actually tempering his divine sense. Xiaohua had already fused Do Shanjun's spiritual sense with his primordial spirit secret technique for quite some time. During this time, he had been comprehending and cultivating, and his improvement was very obvious. Not to mention that his spiritual sense gradually began to match Xiaohua's magic power. Even his various magic treasures began to display their true strength. However, the tempering of his spiritual sense during this time was far from comparable to the tempering of his spiritual sense in this dangerous place. In less than an hour, Xiaohua clearly felt that his spiritual sense had changed by leaps and bounds, and he also had a feeling that if he was given enough time, his spiritual sense would have an incredible improvement in this huge boulder array. Xiaohua somewhat forgot himself as he continued to temper his spiritual sense with the increasingly violent boulders. The dozens of cultivators below him were stunned. When had they ever seen a spiritual sense comparable to the strength of the physical body? Not to mention, even their physical bodies couldn't resist these boulders, let alone their spiritual sense. But look at Xiaohua, where his spiritual sense passed, the boulders collapsed. Although Xiaohua didn't show his Dharma body now, in their eyes, he was even more powerful than his previous Dharma body. So it's here. From far away, Master Sun Kong's voice came from afar, and then Zhang Daoren hurriedly transmitted his voice. Brother Xiao, quickly bring a group of fellow Taoists here. Old man Sun Kong finally found the exit of the defensive array. Okay. Xiao Hua was in the mood to cultivate and was actually interrupted, so he was a little unhappy, but he didn't dare to be negligent. While his figure flew in the direction of Master Sun Kong, his spiritual sense was mixed with the heaven and earth sleeve technique, and layers of giant hands appeared in the air, smashing the huge boulders into pieces. Gaps appeared in the rain of boulders, and it was really an invincible scene. Previously, everyone was shrouded in the shadow of death. Although they saw Xiao Hua's great power, and their blood boiled, they didn't dare to relax, lest an accident would destroy their hope. Now, Master Sun Kong and Zhang Daoren didn't disappoint and found the exit of the defensive array, and the boulders in everyone's hearts were lifted. Moreover, Xiao Hua's methods were even more arrogant than before, and everyone's joy was even more uncontrollable. Needless to say, nascent soul cultivators, after all, had cultivated for thousands of years, and although their faces were brimming with smiles, they were still somewhat reserved. Those Jindan cultivators couldn't care less about this, and the crowd of cultivators boiled up and clamored. Taoist Master Xiao, Taoist Master Xiao, Taoist Master Xiao. Cheers and waves of heat waves rushed into Xiao Hua's ears one after another. This sound couldn't be concealed in the shock of space. Death, in the end, couldn't erase life. Where there were people, there was hope for life. Listening to the sincere cheers of these cultivators, the disappointment and coldness in Xiao Hua's heart towards the Tao sect changed a little. After all, humans were complex, and it was impossible to ask everyone to have noble moral integrity. If everyone was like Xiao Hua, would this hidden immortal continent still be a continent controlled by Confucian cultivators? Would this Jade Pavilion gathering still exist? Chapter 3640. I am the Tao sect's Xiao Hua. Today, I am risking my life to save you all. There is no need for you all to repay me. I only ask that you all have the Tao sect in your hearts. No matter where you go, you must consider yourselves Tao sect disciples. The Tao sect is the door to the heavenly Tao. Entering my Tao sect is the same as stepping into the door to the heavenly Tao. Facing such a heavenly Tao, we should seek it from top to bottom. The difficult path is under our feet, and the dangerous map is in our hearts. Only by remembering that you are a Tao sect disciple, every word and action must have the attitude of the heavenly Tao. Can you comprehend the Tao? Xiao Hua sighed and said in a deep voice, although I walked half a mile earlier, I know that while I am a Tao sect disciple, I am also a human. The word human is easy to write, but human actions are difficult to do. Do not do good because it is small. Do not do evil because it is small. This is a human. Without a human, without humanity, where would the Tao foundation come from? Where would the Tao experience come from? Only by being a good person can you be a good cultivator, can you truly comprehend the heavenly Tao. Thank you, Taoist Master Xiao. Everyone was enlightened. These words could be said by anyone, but in this kind of situation, in this kind of dangerous situation, Xiao Hua said each word engraved in their hearts. These cultivators would probably never forget it for the rest of their lives. Boom boom boom. Xiao Hua urged his divine sense and unleashed one divine ability after another, crushing the boulders above everyone's heads. Even the late nascent soul stage Zhang Daoren and Master Sun Kong in the distance were frightened when they saw this. Just as Zhang Daoren and Sun Kong looked at each other, Xiao Hua's rather bold and unrestrained voice sang again. The Tao sect here has declined early. Today, the hidden immortal Tao sect opens. In this world, with me, Xiao Hua, here, dare to let my disciples be bullied? Hiss. Even someone as arrogant as Sun Kong unconsciously sucked in a breath of cold air when he heard these words. He was able to cultivate to the late nascent soul stage, so his knowledge and experience naturally couldn't be compared to others. He had also seen arrogant Tao sect cultivators, but he had never seen such an arrogant cultivator. Even he didn't dare to speak so arrogantly in front of everyone. This wasn't just Xiao Hua's declaration, but the declaration of the entire Tao sect. This was a challenge to all Confucian cultivators. He really did not know where Xiao Hua's confidence came from. Even if Xiaohua was already very formidable in exalted Sun Kong's eyes, he only had the strength of a low-rank 5th-grade essence energy. How could he dare to say such words? Brother Daoren. Sun Kong's eyes flashed with a strange light, and he transmitted his voice. You really don't know this? Daoist Xiao? Zhang Daoren was equally astonished. He transmitted his voice. This is indeed the first time this old man has seen and heard of. It reminds me of someone. Not bad. Zhang Daoren nodded in understanding as well. That spirit of looking down on all Confucian cultivators in the world and laughing proudly in the 3 continents is very similar to him. What do you think? Sun Kong Shangren's voice was actually trembling. It was unknown whether it was excitement or fear. Zhang Daoren bit his lips and asked, Brother Sun Kong, what do you think? It doesn't matter what I think, because I haven't reached the crucial point of breaking through yet. Sun Kong Shangren narrowed his eyes. And you're only half a step away from entering the out-of-body realm. You should give the Immortal Palace a reason to be at ease. You should give the aristocratic family of Confucian cultivators a reason to be at ease. Maybe. Zhang Daoren's face showed a hint of excitement. This old man should also make a choice. Then, Zhang Daoren suddenly asked again, What about you? What do you want to do? Sun Kong Shangren raised his eyebrows and looked at the several feet in front of him. That macaque called Changgung was gnawing on a tricolored pearl. In front of it, at the place where the splendor flashed, a square several feet in size was emitting a faint glow. This glow was even weaker than a firefly's in the shaking space. If not for the macaque's lead, Sun Kong Shangren would not have been able to find it. This old man came here for the Azure Abyss Dragon saliva. As Brother Daoren said, it won't be too late to talk about it after we get out of Yaodai Mountain alive. Old fox. Zhang Daoren shook his head and looked at the magic treasure in his hand, smashing away the falling rocks. They're here. Sun Kong Shangren did not care about Zhang Daoren's evaluation. He raised his hand and stroked Changgung's head. He said in a low voice, Open the door, GG. The macaque unhappily threw the tricolored pearl into its mouth. Its cheeks bulged and the splendor in its eyes shot out several feet. However, when the splendor landed in the square, it only caused the splendor to flicker slightly and the appearance of the door to become clearer. Other than that, there were no other special changes. Sun Kong Shangren rolled up his Taoist robe and the macaque disappeared. He then said to Zhang Daoren, Brother Daoren, stay here. This old man will go first and open the way for you at the defensive formation. Thank you, Brother Sun Kong. If it was before, Zhang Daoren definitely would not have dared to believe Sun Kong Shangren. However, after seeing Xiaohua's great ability, Zhang Daoren could not help but feel a sense of trust. Brother Sun Kong? Sun Kong Shangren's body flickered with splendor. He waved his hand and the green whip left his hand. It transformed into a long snake that protected his body. When we leave Yaodai Mountain, this old man wants to see who is the elder brother and who is the younger brother. As you wish, a trace of warmth gushed out from Zhang Daoren's heart, and his figure suddenly expanded. He turned his head and said proudly, Brother Xiao, take a rest. This old brother will come to your rescue. Hee. Sun Kong Shangren shook his head slightly and threw himself towards the square that was several feet in size. Faint gray threads flickered on the square and Sun Kong Shangren's body disappeared. Zhang Daoren flew in the air and blocked the huge rock above everyone's head. The group of cultivators did not dare to be negligent. First, a few nascent soul cultivators rushed through the exit. Then, all the nascent soul cultivators stopped and waited for the golden core cultivators to pass. Those golden core cultivators cupped their hands towards everyone and also passed. At this time, the nascent soul cultivators that were waiting quietly moved their bodies. Xiaohua looked at the modesty of these cultivators with a smile. He was very satisfied in his heart. This kind of atmosphere was what Dao cultivators should have. When the last cultivator turned his head and looked at Xiaohua, he nodded slightly at him and disappeared into the exit. Zhang Daoren also descended from the air. The huge rock in the air now was far from what it was before. In just a moment, Zhang Daren's face was already somewhat flushed. Seeing that Xiao Hua was still standing at the exit without moving, Zhang Daoren raised his head and looked at the huge rock that came crashing down from the sky. He urged, "Brother Xiao, you go first. This old brother will cover your back." "No need. This Xiao does not want to leave for the time being." Xiao Hua's reply made Zhang Daren's jaw drop. You don't want to leave? What are you doing here?" Zhang Daoren asked somewhat strangely. Xiao Hua smiled slightly and said, "This defensive formation is so dangerous. Unless you and I are at the upper 4th grade of essence power, we cannot withstand it. If other cultivators mistakenly enter this place, they will only end up losing their lives on the spot. This Xiao will wait for a few more days. If someone falls in here, I can still save a few lives." "No, it can't be." Zhang Daoren was almost moved to tears by Xiao Hua's nobility. However, when he looked at Xiao Hua's smiling face, he seemed to understand something. He raised his head and looked at the huge rock that came crashing down on the top of his head. He hurriedly raised his hand and took out a jade eye and a few bottles of medicinal pills from his Qiankuan bag. He handed them to Xiao Hua and said, "Brother Xiao, take care of yourself. This is the location of this old brother's abode. If you leave Yaotai Mountain, regardless of whether this old brother is here or not, you have to go to Grand Wind Mountain." Xiao Hua was also not polite. He took the jade eye and medicinal pills and nodded, "Don't worry, old brother. This Xiao will be fine. You will also be fine." Boom. It was also at this time that Xiao Hua released his divine sense and blasted a huge rock that came crashing down. Zhang Daoren smiled bitterly and cupped his hands toward Xiao Hua. His figure also fell into the exit. After Zhang Daoren left, Xiao Hua stretched his body. His gaze swept over the huge rocks that covered the sky and earth. He secretly smiled and said, "This Xiao has already obtained the Imperial Preceptor's lot. There is no reason for me to fight over the treasures with you guys. This Jade Pavilion gathering's defensive formations come one after another. This Xiao has no intention of breaking through them one by one. Moreover, this Xiao has a feeling that as long as I stay in this defensive formation, I will be able to find the whereabouts of green-robed Xiao Hua. Why should this Xiao give up what is close at hand and seek what is far away? Moreover, this Xiao has already regretted breaking out of the bewildering formation on the Sunset Island. Now, isn't this giant rock falling formation 100 times more useful than the bewildering formation on the Sunset Island? If this Xiao doesn't cultivate here, then this Xiao's brain must be damaged." While speaking, Xiao Hua urged his magic power and displayed the wind evasion technique. His entire body was like a gust of wind as he danced in the rain of huge rocks. At the same time, his mind mixed with divine sense still rushed out and condensed 100 zhang above his head. Now that Xiao Hua was flying a long distance, he naturally had to rely on the lightning evasion technique. Moreover, the lightning evasion technique had just broken through and had already reached the lightning soaring realm. For the time being, it was impossible for him to make any further progress. His wind evasion technique was originally used in combination with the ethereal steps for short distances. Just now, he had used up a lot of his magic power to activate the lightning evasion technique. When he was moving around in the space again, it was naturally better to use the wind evasion technique. Therefore, he was determined to cultivate the wind evasion technique to the extreme here. The flowing cloud movement technique was given to him by the Empress of the 10,000 Demon Realm. Although it was only the most basic cultivation technique, it was still very difficult to cultivate. Xiao Hua's figure floated back and forth in the rain of huge rocks, always dodging the bombardment of the huge rocks at an incredible speed. In the beginning, Xiao Hua frequently made mistakes. The huge rocks flashed brilliantly and fiercely smashed onto Xiao Hua's body. Sometimes it smashed Xiao Hua's flesh and blood, and sometimes it smashed him 100 zhang away. However, every time Xiao Hua's body was surrounded by the heaven and earth yuan qi, the injuries on his body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Not even half a drop of blood fell. After cultivating for several days, just as Xiao Hua was sent flying by a huge rock, he heard several screams in the distance. Xiaohua frowned and said in a low voice, "Oh, this Xiao was right. Could it be that a cultivator really fell here?" Then Xiaohua released his divine sense. Sure enough, he saw more than 10 nascent soul and golden core cultivators standing in the air with pale faces. They were hurriedly summoning magic weapons. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.